July.
Okay. I'll call the special meeting of Council of August 24th, 2024 to order at 2:04. Before we start, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the town of Winnipeg Beach is located on First Nations Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, the Dakota, and the Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties made on these territories. We dedicate ourselves to move forward with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration to make Manitoba an inclusive and accessible place for everyone who lives here.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the August 6, 2024 special meeting of council be approved as presented.
Can we move her, please? Councillor Cool. Seconder, please. Councillor Gendron. All in favor? Carried. The council had requested a special meeting to review the traffic bylaw. Current traffic bylaws from 2017. As a result, I'm assuming that everyone took an opportunity to read and study the current traffic bylaw?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we start on the first page? As our CAO has said in the past, there's no point trying to pick and choose different things that we want to change. We need to go through the whole bylaw and see what is relevant and what isn't relevant. Did people have any questions, comments, points of discussion on the first page?
Yep.
Yeah, I had a few as well.
Okay, 3.1, that is a bylaw. All terrain vehicle means an off-road vehicle that, do we want, we need to address the issue of golf carts. I know it's further on the agenda, so I'm thinking after our discussion on golf carts, we may want to come back to 3.1 and see if we want to include golf carts in this definition based on what our discussion is.
Okay.
Okay. Also, 3.1.3 has handlebars for steering the vehicle. I made a note, does this refer to 3.1 and 3. Never mind, ignore that one. So it operates or travels on 3 or more low pressure tires, has a seat designed to be straddled by the operator, of the vehicle, and has handlebars for steering the vehicle. Is the end, are these 3 separate things that must be met?
I believe that this is a definition that's taken out of the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's one of my comments through this, is that it would seem to me that there are a number of things that are just taken out of the Manitoba Traffic Highway Act that I don't think necessarily pertain to our town. So for example, 3.10, they're talking about highways. We don't have any highways that we're in charge of in our town. We are in charge of streets, roads, and lanes. So I'm not sure that, 3.1.0, that part of the highways at intersection distinctly indicated for pedestrian traffic, that part of the highway elsewhere that an intersection is distinctly that part of the highway that is included within the straight production. It keeps talking about highway. I don't know that we have to have definitions of highway.
Sorry, Mayor Jackson, you said 3.1.0, it's 3.10 you're referring to, in case anyone's looking.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't know that we need to be, our enforcement is on our roads and our streets. Our enforcement does not include the highways. Highway 9, Highway 8, we're not in charge of those. We're in charge of the roads and the streets within our town. So simply taking the Manitoba Traffic Act and regurgitating it all here, I think is not necessarily helpful or useful and makes this a very difficult bylaw to read and interpret for the town of Winnipeg Beach when they're talking about violations, including things that are happening on the highway, as opposed to streets and lanes. Councillor Jarvis.
I think this refers to example 3.49 where it's talking about sidewalks, meaning footpaths paved or not paved, intended primarily for the use of pedestrians, because we do have Highway 9 and people walk on both sides of Highway 9. So I think even though it's a highway, but we still have in the Traffic Act our pedestrian traffic. So I think that's where it's referring to.
Right, but we're not, we shouldn't be having a bylaw that speaks to what people can and can't be doing on Highway 9 when we have no ability to enforce what's happening on
Then who would, I question who would enforce the pedestrian traffic on Highway 9?
that would be our CMP. That would be out of our jurisdiction.
Okay, but is the highway responsible, and I'm only asking a question here, is the highway responsible for the sidewalk there? The footpath that people walk on? So who's responsible for that, the province?
I don't believe there's an actual designated footpath on number 9, it's just the shoulders, right?
But that's,
Correct.
but yeah, but again, it mentions, because I had that actually as a question, it mentions whether it's improved or not on there. And I'm just trying to solve the highway thing, because it says, this sidewalk, meaning footpath, whether or not paved or improved, that is intended primarily for the use of pedestrians and either forms part of the portion of a highway that lies between the curb line or, if there is none, the lateral boundary line of the highway. So, I don't know if we can get away with highway on here. And again, I don't know, maybe Councillor John has the answer.
No, Councillor Gentleman, sorry, is just wondering what article you were referring to there, Councillor Jarvis?
Page 5,
3.49.
3.49.
3.49. I thought we were looking at page 1.
No, it's because Mayor Jackson had a question about highway. And part of our problem is that we do have a highway that goes right through the middle of our town.
Right, but we
Yeah.
can't enforce anything on that highway.
I'm not worried about the highway, but the only question is, I don't think we can remove highway because we do have a footpath on there.
Okay, but this bylaw is for the purposes of things that we can enforce. And we can't enforce stuff on the highway.
I yield to the CAO.
So under any article under 3, so 3.1, 3.49, anything under 3, these are definitions only
Mhm.
and have nothing to do with enforcement.
Right.
What's happened is they've taken definitions out of the Highway Traffic Act and threw them in your bylaw.
Exactly.
And so, depending on where council wants to look, we cannot, as a municipality, we cannot enforce the Highway Traffic Act. So when it comes to what we as a municipality can enforce, you may want to revisit the definitions once it's determined what the bylaw is enforcing, because all of number 3 is just definitions.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
sorry, would it make more sense then that we jump to the bylaw itself, go through it step by step, see what we want to include, see what we want to take out, add what we want to add, and then go through the definitions, take out anything that is listed as a definition that is no longer relevant to the bylaw, see if we want to change any of the definitions that are relative to the bylaw, and then add any definitions based on what we might be adding to the bylaw itself.
We can do that if that's what council wants to do.
Because I'm just thinking we maybe.
What do you think, Councillor Kozlowski?
Pardon me?
What do you think?
Sure.
Sure to,
What Chief was saying. Different things.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
can't hear you.
Yeah, go with different stuff, and I got a problem with my hearing these days. I don't hear, you're not connected with.
Sorry, let me repeat then. What I had suggested was that instead of going through all the definitions,
Yeah,
that we jump to the meat of the bylaw, go through it,
yeah.
see what we want to keep, take out, and
Yeah.
then review the definitions after the fact. Okay.
Okay, are people fine with that?
I'm good.
Okay, so refer to 4.0 on page 6. Starts with vehicles and funeral processions. Anybody have any concern with 4.0? 5.0? Yeah.
So if I just may ask for clarification, if we're leaving 4.0 in, is there any penalty, or is there any repercussion if, like, is this something that our bylaw officer is enforcing, and what does that enforcement piece look like?
I think that we have to be realistic in terms of what we can enforce and what we can't enforce. And so there's no point wanting to enforce, putting information in here to enforce if we're not able to enforce, you know what I mean? Every time there's a funeral in Winnipeg Beach, not necessarily is the bylaw officer there. Unless council wants to have the bylaw officer notified every time there's a funeral in town to make sure that the bylaws are being enforced. And then if the bylaw officer is there when a funeral is in town and they aren't following this bylaw, what kind of consequences do you want to have?
So-
First of all, we got Councillor Gendron and then Councillor Jarvis.
I don't think this is something that we should necessarily be looking at enforcing. Do we want to advise funeral directors in the area or the churches in the area if they wish to hire the bylaw officer on their own to provide support, that they can reach out to the bylaw officer independent of us doing anything, or do we want to just leave it?
Councillor Jarvis?
So you're suggesting taking out 4.2? With just,
I'm not, so I'm
no,
not-
I'm talking with Pam, yeah. You're suggesting take out the whole thing, the whole section?
Or we can leave it in there with no enforcement.
And put in, like, text that says, or just don't enforce it, period?
I'm just opening up for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with 4.1, but 4.2, I mean, I would agree that I don't think it's necessary to have a peace officer, but at the same time with Councillor Gendron, I do the same thing. If they want to hire him, then hire him. If they want to have I mean, we had a situation with the Boardwalk Days parade where people are circumventing the parade, they're getting in there.
Right, and that comes later in the bylaw in terms of
Mhm.
parades. This is for funeral processions.
No, I'm just saying that they're going to get in funeral processions, it's no different, and they're just going to do that, so.
Councillor Gendron.
I'd just like to suggest we leave it, and if there happens to be a peace officer there, peace officer assists with traffic, but we have probably bigger things to be dealing with than funeral processions in our traffic bylaw.
What do other people think?
Sure.
So leave it there with no enforcement?
Yeah, is my suggestion.
Yeah, sure. I just was wondering about the parking and everything, and the bylaw officer would hand out tickets that day for funeral, people that go to the funeral and get parked in any legal place.
That would come under the bylaw, that would come under the parking section of the
Yeah.
bylaw?
And I got no problem with the
5.0. Again, we have vehicles, 5.2, vehicles of or employed by the town of Winnipeg Beach while in use or in connection with work being done on or near a highway. It's not talking about roads, streets, or laneways. 5.3, the same thing. Comments? What do we want to change this to? This is a bylaw prohibiting standing or parking provision of this bylaw prohibiting standing or parking shall not apply to Town of Winnipeg Beach.
Yeah.
Right, so that
makes
means that
sense.
Town of Winnipeg Beach vehicles can be parked on the side of the road can be parked on the side of a highway
Yeah,
if they're being used. It doesn't say they can be parked on the side of a street or road or laneway in the Town of Winnipeg Beach. We don't have highways in the Town of Winnipeg Beach except for,
right, but there are times when our staff are working near the highway, so I think it is important, or assisting highways on certain things. So I do think in this case, it is important to leave on or near a highway, but that we also include roadway or laneway.
okay?
And we may just circle this with roadway, and once we go back to our definitions, it may need adjusting depending on what wording we're using, but we want to make sure that this includes the highway, the provincial highways, the roadways within town, and the laneways.
Okay. I'm just not sure, Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, can we give permission in our bylaw for town vehicles to be parked where they shouldn't be on a highway when we're not in charge of enforcement on the highway?
That's not what this one is saying, no. This
Yeah.
is just saying vehicles of or employed by the town of Winnipeg Beach while in use or in connection with work being done on or near a highway. Means that the vehicle can be standing or parked while they're doing the work. It's not necessarily saying that they're parked on the highway. It's just saying that they can be standing or parked while they're doing the work on or near the highway.
I see.
So it's not saying, we're not saying they can be parked on the highway, we're just saying they can be parked or standing.
Okay.
So just for an example, Pam.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, okay.
And you're suggesting we add roadway and lane?
And then we just kind of put a star beside that one, and anytime we use highway, roadway, and lane, and then we will revisit those after we sort out our definitions.
So I guess the concern here is that there's no mention of work being done on or near a highway with either RCMP or vehicles of Majesty's Forces, Government of Manitoba. So I'm not sure why that's been soloed out to our works department, because this is referencing the provision of this bylaw prohibiting standing or parking shall not apply. So once we kind of go through, my recommendation the CEO may have is, I don't know why we have while in use or in connection of work being done or on or near a highway. I don't understand why that's listed when it's not listed in the other provisions. And so it's stating this provision of the bylaw prohibiting standing or parking shall not apply. And what might be clearer is if that as we go through the provisions of the bylaw where we say vehicles cannot be parked, vehicles cannot do this, we state those sections of the bylaw, these provisions of the bylaw being section this, do not apply, shall not apply to, and then list the vehicles.
These both say work. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police or vehicles engaged in work of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Force, and vehicles of Her Majesty, the Royal Force of the Government of or any public utility, if such vehicle has the owner's name painted thereon, and it actually engaged in work necessary.
Right, so why are we saying, why do we add done or near a highway, is what I'm saying. None of those state that, if the concern is the verbiage around the
Sorry,
highway.
Sharon, okay, that makes complete sense now. Thank you. I agree.
With while in
Yeah.
use or connection with work,
Period.
period.
Okay.
And then we can just highlight this.
Yep.
Like, we should clearly list the sections they do not apply to,
Yep.
instead of just stating standing or parking. Like, to be clear with the bylaw itself, we should list the sections that do not apply to these service vehicles. So as we work through that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
have with the next section about placing maintenance and traffic signs, again, it comes back down to enforcement. Like, we can have detour or slow, but I don't know where my bylaw officer is gonna have the authority to issue a ticket on the roadways. It's,
Mhm.
So
but
just, like, some of this too, though, is expectations of town staff for some things too. And so, especially in this section, so while enforcement may not be a priority of the bylaw enforcement officer, it does allow the public to know what to expect. It allows the staff to know what's expected of them and what it means when the public comes upon these signs. So, to me, some of these things do need to be in here even if there's no enforcement, for public awareness and for staff understanding what's expected of them in some circumstances. 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3 refer to the public works foreman and superintendent. That could all just be changed to the public works manager.
Yep.
And 6.5, any curb painted yellow, no parking, or blue, please scratch out handicap parking. It is accessible parking.
Can people tell me what their understanding of 6.5 is? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Jarvis, what's your understanding of 6.5 when you read it?
The way it says right now is that they can park there. Sign doesn't necessarily mean that they can't park there.
They being,
Whoever wants to park there.
so you read it as saying,
It says any curb painted yellow or blue is considered a courtesy on behalf of the town. In absence of a painted curb or street accompanying a proper sign does not form a basis for challenging a parking prohibition.
yeah, so what's your understanding of what that means?
We're responsible. I mean, it's a courtesy that we provide that. There doesn't seem to be proper legislation for it.
Okay, Councillor Cool, what's your understanding of what 6.5 means?
My understanding is that it is a courtesy and people, you have to have a,
Doesn't mention it.
well, it doesn't mention that, but
I'm just asking because I read it 4 or 5 times and every time I've read it, it means something different to me. And so if we're not sure what it means, we have to figure out what we actually want to say about that and then put in something that makes sense to us so that when other people are reading it, it makes sense to them.
parking.
Councillor Jarvis.
I understand though that under the Highway Traffic Act, that blue and yellow are standard, like for no parking.
Yes.
Correct, whether you're in Selkirk or you're in Stonewall or Winnipeg Beach.
Yes.
But what I don't understand the courtesy concept of it in our bylaw.
Well, that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm asking people how they understand 6.5.
Right, because
It just sounds like it's not enforceable and it's there just to.
It sounds to me like it's saying if it's yellow or blue, it's a courtesy.
Please don't park there.
But if there are places where it's not yellow or blue, it's not a challenge to a parking prohibition. Like, this makes no sense to me. Does our illustrious CAO have any understanding of what 6.5 means?
I think a lot of this bylaw was based on the fact that having some level of bylaw in place to issue tickets that aren't fully enforceable just as an act of good faith. And so very much, I think we've heard that even at the business parking meeting when we were discussing parking. Who cares if it's not technically enforceable, but if you do something, it may prohibit some people from parking there. And so I guess at this point, if you're looking at having no parking zones, this will be your traffic bylaw, which will allow for no parking zones. And then the penalties that council wants to enforce with the no parking zones can then be enforced through our MBA, like through our enforcement bylaw, recognizing there's, but to give the authority. So if council's looking at having handicapped accessible parking zones and wanting those accessibility parking zones enforced, then that needs to be identified.
And this needs to be changed.
I would think that if it's just a courtesy, I'm not sure. So then when you hear throughout the rants of Facebook, how come people are parking in the yellow curb section? Well, this is just a courtesy, and so there's nothing we can do about it anyway. So, yeah,
That's right.
that's why no tickets are issued.
Councillor Jarvis.
But unless I'm wrong, you know, and if it's enforceable, say in Stonewall, like I'm under the impression that, and even in the Highway Traffic Act, it says that you can only be so many, I think it's 18 feet from an intersection. And so some of the curbs are painted yellow for that reason, that because they're within the boundaries of, so we.
True again though, but when we look at the Highway Traffic Act, we have to remember our bylaw enforcement officer has no authority to issue Highway Traffic Act
Oh, I
authorities.
know, I just,
So,
we
so
stopped
if
making
that
curbs then.
is, if that, true, like that's,
Like every year we
I mean,
expend time and energy and
and
money
maybe that-
into painting blue and yellow curbs, but if we're not gonna do anything with them, then why don't we just save the money?
The question before council is, council's decision here is, do we want to paint curbs blue and yellow? And do we want to enforce? Because if we say yes to both, then we change the bylaw to read that. No matter what Stonewall or Selkirk or anybody
No,
else.
that's what I understand. I understand everything you just said.
So we need to
So-
make a decision at this table in terms of whether we want to be doing the blue and yellow and if we want to enforce them, and if so, how we want to enforce them. Councillor Gendra.
Earlier I stated, while it might not be, enforcement might not be a priority now. I think we need to be looking at this as, no, we might not be enforcing it now, but we also don't want to have to be changing the traffic bylaw in a year from now if the priorities of enforcement change. So do we want, and unless I'm completely going down the wrong road, Madam CAO.
no, this is
Doesn't make
council's
sense, yeah,
role.
so does it make
Bylaw
sense for us to be
legislation
looking
either is-
long-term? Yes, right now, issuing parking tickets may not be a priority, but it may be a priority next year. We may be putting things in the budget that allow us to, so do we want to be looking at this as a longer-term bylaw than just a year? And look at considering putting enforcement issues in, even though right now we may not be enforcing them? Or do we leave the enforcement out until we're in a position to be enforcing?
Well, the last time this council had a discussion about parking, the majority of council voted saying you wanted to enforce ticket and tow. That was our last discussion here. So that to me means enforcement. And so if we're talking enforcement ticket and tow, then we're also talking enforcement for accessible parking and yellow curb parking. We can't decide, or in my mind, we can't decide to enforce this part of parking but not this part of parking. So in keeping with, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this traffic bylaw meeting, was because at our last meeting on parking, the majority of council voted in favor of ticket and tow. Hence, we're having this meeting to look at what are we ticketing and what are we towing? What are we enforcing and how are we enforcing it?
Okay.
That's my understanding. Is that your understanding, Councillor Hu?
Yep.
Is that your understanding, Councillor Kozlowski? Okay. So we are back to the yellow and blue curbs. This needs to be changed if we are talking about parking enforcement, which we are. So it needs to be worded in such that any curb where it's yellow or blue, it is restricted parking. And we have to define what that looks like, and we have to decide on what the enforcement of that is going to be. So, open for discussion. Councillor Jandro.
Any curb painted yellow, no parking, or blue, accessible parking.
With
Hold on. Get rid of is considered a courtesy on behalf of the town.
Get rid of that.
And absence of.
Take the whole thing.
Hang on, what do I and. Okay, sorry, any curb painted yellow, no parking, or blue, accessible. But not on a street. Not accompanied by a proper sign. Does not form a basis for challenging a parking prohibition. Which means that if somebody, so let me just say what I'm trying to say here. So just because there's no sign that says accessible parking over a blue spot, if you park there, because blue is accessible parking, if you park there and you don't have the proper accessible parking path permit in your vehicle, just because there's not a sign there, doesn't mean we can't ticket you, because the blue means it's accessible parking only.
So do we have to have the sign even mentioned in there? Can we not just say, if a curb is, a curb painted yellow is no parking, any infraction will be enforced by such and such. A curb painted blue is accessible parking only. Anybody parked in that spot without appropriate sticker will be ticketed in this fashion.
Then,
As opposed to saying with a sign, without a sign, sometimes with a sign, sometimes not a sign.
well, then I think we need, I'm gonna be honest with you, until I read through this thoroughly, I had no idea that that's what the blue paint on, where there's no signage, I had no idea that that is what the blue paint meant.
That's what I was saying
So then
before,
we
it's
need-
it's standard
yeah.
procedure.
So
In any
hang on,
town that
sorry, Councilor
yellow or
Jarvis,
blue.
can I just
Yeah.
finish, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So if we're gonna just do yellow and blue and not go to the extensive cost of signage all on the streets, then we need some form of signage as you're entering the town. Yellow is no parking, blue is accessible parking only.
Okay, Councillor Jarvis, you want?
That's what I was saying before, is that it's standard, in the driver's handbook, it says yellow curbs are no parking, and blue is accessible parking only. Now, I agree that I think we should have signs for blue, because there has to be, and I think the legislation is coming, and I've mentioned before, is that if we have 50 spots, then they're gonna have that, so I think we need to have the challenge parking. However, the yellow, you can just paint them yellow, and that's in the handbook.
Okay, so
Like, that's a ticket.
why don't we take out the courtesy on behalf of the town of Winnipeg Beach and add to it, absence of a proper sign does not form a basis for challenging a parking prohibition.
Right.
So that we will put signs up, but if there is a place where there isn't a sign, it's not a basis of challenging. Does that make sense?
Because I think we have our sidewalk here, curb is painted blue, and there's no sign in front of the town office.
Okay, so any curb painted yellow, there's no parking anytime. The curb painted blue is no parking except if you have appropriate accessible parking sticker. The absence of a proper sign does not form a basis for challenging a parking problem. That make sense? So in 6.5 is where we then determine what the enforcement is?
No, so if you're saying any curb painting yellow is no parking, right? That's no parking anytime. Blue is with the sign and then it does not. So then when you get down to further down the line,
Okay.
I would recommend that we may want to determine some level of map system of, for the painted curbs. When you look at turnover and paint fades, I think it would be prudent that we clearly establish which areas are marked by a schedule, which can be changed by resolution as to the areas that deemed no parking anytime, as council may want to add some additional no parking any time spaces, not just so much from an entryway or so much from a stop sign.
Okay. But we had skipped ahead to 6.5. I wanted to go back to 6.2. Temporary traffic signs, regulated traffic where highway construction, repairs, painting, snowmobile. Can we just take the word highway out? Where construction, repairs, painting, snow removal, street sweeping, or other emergency occurs. Just take out the word highway. Because again, that only then refers to a highway, not a street. Same as 6.6, no person shall place or maintain or display upon or in view of a highway any unofficial sign, signal, or device. So again, we're going to have to define what we want here. Or do we want anything? Which purports to be or is an imitation of or resembles an official sign, signal, or device, and no person shall attempt to hide from view any official sign, signal, or device. This is again taken right out of the Manitoba Highway Act. Is this something we want in our bylaw or not?
No, it doesn't make sense.
Does it make sense to you, Councillor General? No. What about Councillor Houle, Councillor Jarvis?
No, do we know if it's in the Highway Traffic Act already?
So we don't need this for our town? Councillor Jarvis?
So, I'm just saying, can anybody put up a sign, no parking or whatever, like? Isn't it saying no person shall maintain or display upon a view any unofficial sign or device which purports to be an invitation or resemble an official sign? So, if we leave it in there, then wouldn't it be a free-for-all if somebody wants to put no parking on, say Ash, they want to put no parking sign on? I don't know, I just, are we responsible for putting the signs up, or can anybody put up their own sign?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Do we want this?
I think just take out the view of the highway, like you said, and leave it there.
I think, don't we have signs coming into number 9 highway? With the lions and we have our sign, rec center, where we post on there. And that's in
Right.
view of a highway. So
But I
let's
do
take out the
stand
word highway.
firm, when it comes to in view of a highway, like number 9, stay in our own lane. If
That's right.
highways has a problem with the sign, highways will contact they will just either remove them or they
That's
will
right.
contact whoever has placed them up there. There's nothing, like I think we're overstepping a boundary by jumping into the Highway Traffic Act. And now if this is a boundary though that council is wanting to take more action on, the only way we as a municipality can look at that type of item is by going through the CSO program. And even with that, like it's a community safety officer, right? So there's been pilots that the province has been reintroducing the community safety officer program for about the last 8 years or so. Big pilot was up at Thompson,
Yep.
which gave the CSO officer authorities to enforce provincial jurisdiction. And so I don't know how serious the traffic issue here is in Winnipeg Beach, and it's not, yeah.
So, Councillor Jarvis, if your concern is people not putting up traffic signs on their own, then we can certainly say no person shall place or maintain or display any unofficial
Just take-
traffic sign,
yeah,
signal, or
I agree
device,
with what you said,
period.
just take highway out of everything.
So don't say upon view, so no person shall place or maintain or display any unofficial traffic sign,
Correct.
signal, or
Yeah,
device.
and I think that would cover all the things that people put up.
because we're just worried about the traffic signs. They can,
Yeah, people put up all kinds of weird signs, you know, like,
and then take the rest out.
yeah, and we're not giving them the right to direct traffic.
So then what are we gonna do if they do?
Well, that's what we have to talk about in terms of enforcement.
But
Well, no, so,
didn't we say we were gonna talk about
We're gonna be talking about
enforcement
that
later?
towards the end, Jean.
okay, so enforcement is not just monetary. Because to me, so just bear with me for a second here. If we want our public works staff to remove them,
Mhm.
would that go in 6.6, Sharon, or would it go in under
Enforcement.
enforcement? Because, sorry, enforcement to me is monetary, that's why my head is stuck on. Could it just be
Right,
in,
but if you're just directing Public Works to remove them,
yeah, would it go
And
under
there's no-
6.6?
penalty of any, what really are you enforcing? You're just directing staff to remove signs.
So that could go under 6.6 if that's what we want to do with this? Right into the.
I would just say, so what you're trying to establish is you're trying to establish the rules, right? You can this, you cannot this, you cannot this.
Okay.
And then you look at the consequences of anyone who's in breach. Like if you look at your enforcement piece, there's very little of this bylaw
So where are we going?
that is under
20.
20.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's very little of this bylaw that our bylaw officer is enforcing. Section 18 is the only piece.
yeah.
So if you're not going to have enforcement, I'm not sure, I guess as an education tool, like, because people read town bylaws at their leisure.
Well, so
I
if
never
we're
did.
directing public works staff to remove them, if that is, like, if we're giving the authority to the public works staff to remove it as opposed to the cost of the bylaw enforcement officer doing it, would it go under 20? It's because it's not a penalty.
Okay, so if
Sorry,
you're
I'm
just
looking
saying
at the
that
wrong
no
number.
person shall have, okay, if no person shall place, maintain, or display any unofficial sign, signal, device which purports to be an imitation or resembles an official sign, signal, or device, and no person shall attempt to hide from view any official sign, signal, device, right? So we're saying no person will, then why would you say no person will? Then to me, the term, if the action of placing a unofficial sign is Public Works will remove, then Public Works Department will remove any unofficial sign, signal, device. Like, I'm not sure why
Okay.
we're saying no person shall place it.
Okay,
Like, if
so
you're
then-
saying no
okay.
person shall place it, that's saying there's
There's
a
consequence for it.
consequence for a person
Right.
placing it.
So public works shall remove
Any of it.
any unofficial sign, signal, or device which purports to be or is an imitation or resembles an official sign, signal.
If that's what council wants to do.
I would prefer we say Public Works will remove any sign,
Any unofficial sign.
any unofficial sign,
Related to parking?
unofficial sign, oh geez, now.
I think it should be signs, period, because you go to other municipalities, and sorry to interrupt, but they have signs on sidewalks about, from 4 blocks away.
Okay, I don't know that we can say we're gonna remove any sign, because that means if someone puts up a sign advertising their garage sale, Public Works will remove that. This is just signs about pretending to be a traffic control device.
Right, somebody
So say-
steals a 90-kilometer sign
And puts it
and
on the
puts it up
front yard.
next to your, like, before you're 30.
Yeah, exactly.
These are imitations.
So what we're saying is Public Works shall remove any unofficial traffic sign, signal, or device, period. It doesn't, I don't think we have to have which purports to be or is an imitation of or resembles, because then people are gonna argue saying, well, yeah, it says 90 kilometers, but it doesn't purport to be that, and it's not pretending to be that, and it's not really an imitation, like it gets a little crazy. Public Works shall remove any unofficial traffic sign, signal, or device, period, because that's what we're after. We're not after the garage sale signs, we're not after the lemonade stand signs, we're not after any of those kinds of signs.
So we're after these slow down children playing signs? Because we would be if that's how we word it.
Yeah, this was discussed before, the previous council.
But I don't think we shouldn't be, people that have a sign in their front lawn that says, slow down, that, you know, MPI issues signs, CAA issues signs, these aren't like people taking a piece of cardboard. These are official signs that are available and people have them throughout the beach area but if we word it the way Pam said, we have to understand then that
Okay.
those are not allowed either.
In their yard or on the boulevard?
In their yard.
Okay, so an official sign would not be placed in someone's yard.
Okay, that's fine,
Right.
then that's what, okay, yeah, it wouldn't be a
I'm
traffic.
slightly
sign.
confused.
Oh,
Like, no, because I thought we were talking about town property. You know, like, I mean, if you put up a garage sign in a ditch, or a garage sale sign in a ditch, or some, even here, if you advertise a business on the sidewalk, that's your business, it's across town, if you follow what I'm saying. Because they used to have, example, down at the corner of Hamilton and Main for Emma's Tea Room, which was over on Murray. You know what I mean? Is that people would put signs indiscriminately around town.
okay, we're not talking about those kinds of signs, we're just talking about unofficial traffic devices or signs, because this is a traffic bylaw. So we're talking about people putting up their own,
And the fact that we would not have a traffic sign on somebody's personal property, as stated by the CAO, addressed my concern about the slowdown. People are putting those in their yard, that's not where an official sign would be, so it wouldn't fall under this and need to be removed. Satisfied with my inquiry, thank you very much, Madam CAO.
I agree.
Okay, so Public Works. I mean, was that a problem? Were people placing fake traffic signs up in Winnipeg Beach in 2017 that this was?
There's been no parking signs in the past that people put up. Fred Kelly used to do it at Hamilton. Kevin Patricky used to do it on his property. Unofficial signs, no parking, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. That's what it's, okay.
6.7.
Paint lines?
It's talking about you shouldn't drive over any painted lines on a highway when presence of such is indicated by markers or lighted lanterns.
Gone, highway reference only.
Gone? 6.7? Councillor Kozlowski,
That
Councillor
would be part of the traffic
Yeah, that's a
highway,
highway.
so leave it out.
And 7.0.
Soliciting rides on highways, I think 7.0 should be totally taken out. I'm just saying what I think. If you guys have another opinion, I'd like to hear it.
I agree.
Passing on or within 50 feet of an intersection. Again, this is highway. What do people think?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I got distracted for a second. Could you repeat that, please?
Passing on or within 50 feet of intersection 8.0. No driver of a vehicle other than an emergency vehicle when overtaking another vehicle traveling in the same direction upon a highway within the town of Winnipeg Beach. And there's the problem right there. We don't have highways in the town of Winnipeg Beach. No vehicle shall pass or attempt to pass such other vehicle in an intersection or within 50 feet of an intersection within the municipal limits of the town of Winnipeg Beach. I don't know we can enforce this, we don't have highways where you're, like, it doesn't make any sense to me, unless people have a different opinion.
What do they refer as number 9 in the town of Winnipeg Beach, going through Winnipeg Beach?
We have no jurisdiction over them. We
Yeah, I
have
realize
jurisdiction
that.
over our streets, Robinson Street, Stitt Street, Oak, Ash, Pine.
It's very similar with speeding, like you could put your speed zones up, but we with a bylaw enforcement officer cannot enforce the speed limits, right? That's unless
highway
again,
traffic act.
you want it, there is an issue and we start investigating, community safety officer.
That's right.
But that is a partnership with the conference, so it's,
And we can't afford a community safety officer. We have to buy them cars, uniforms, guns, everything else. So we're taking 8.0 out, is everybody okay with that? 9.0. 9.1. No person shall travel on a roadway at a speed of greater than 30 kilometers an hour within a reduced restricted speed area of any park or playground in the town of Winnipeg Beach. So is that not contained in 9.2? Because the only reduced,
Well, no, according to 9.1, the speed should be reduced at Mr. Moore Park and Beachside Park 12 months a year.
How about Stitt Street too? You got a playground right there.
I just wanna,
The sub-
Well,
Although my question was, what are our restricted,
no,
reduced?
it's saying
reduced-
within a reduced restricted speed area of any park or playground. That means if we have a park or playground, Winnipeg Beach can decide to make it restricted. And then people can't drive over 30 kilometers an hour. Winnipeg Beach Town has not decided to restrict around the playgrounds. It's only restricted around the school zone, which is 9.2, but I could be making this up in terms of how I'm interpreting it. Which is why I'm saying the only place that we have it restricted is the school, so I'm not sure 9.1 even needs to be there.
And I did have the question, what are our restricted areas? So, but you just answered it. It just allows us to identify one, and if we do, the speed limit is limited to 30 kilometers an hour.
Right, but we haven't identified any restricted areas.
so there is though, establishing speed limits, like there's a bylaw 919, so there was a change in regulation where the province did allow for municipalities to take ownership. There used to be municipalities had no ability to reduce speed zones other than based on what was normal Highway Traffic Act, which school zones would be part of it. They did change legislation where if you did pass a separate bylaw, and it looks like bylaw 919 by the looks of it, I'm just and that was passed, and actually what I can do is have, like if we're going to be looking at general regulations, if we're talking about any speed zones, I would be recommending with the Traffic Act, I'd have that we would remove them from there, and if you want to have reduced speed zones, if the bylaw, the current bylaw is suitable, then there's no need to change that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if my memory serves me correctly, that bylaw was to allow us to change just the school zone to 30
It
kilometers an
says,
hour.
I have a final, let's see if this is the one that's final and signed, yes it is. So it has, but then recognizing that was, I think, late in 23, when they were doing the bridge, that came to light to the province that we have this bylaw and we're not providing the appropriate signage.
Then we have 919 as a bylaw,
Yes, so.
and what is the bylaw?
It's saying here, maximum speed limits on highways, roadways, back lanes within the town of Winnipeg Beach. At all times of the year, the maximum speed limit on highways, roadways, and back lanes under the town of Winnipeg Beach is as follows. All those highways and roadways and portions thereof situated within the town of Winnipeg Beach, excluding PR 229, between the boundary of Winnipeg Beach and PTH number 9, PR number 232, PTH number 9, Curtston Road, are designated at 40 kilometers. So aside from, so what you have is excluding, you have a lot of excluding, like 229 you didn't reduce anything, 232 wasn't reduced, PTH 9 and Kernstead Road between PTH 9 and 332, those are not reduced, and those are regular highway traffic speeds, but all the other roads are designated as reduced restricted speed areas, and the maximum speed for vehicles being driven in those areas is 40 kilometers. All those highways and portions of roadway known as back lanes situating the boundary are reduced restricted speed areas to a maximum speed at 20 kilometers. Seasonal speed limit, Prospect Street from June 1st to August 31st annually is fixed at 30 kilometers. And reduced speed school zone, Robinson Avenue from Stitt to PR 232 Churchill Drive, where reduced speed zone applies from September to June, Monday to Friday at 30 kilometers. So that's the bylaw that refers to your speed. And so you have a newer bylaw that's recognizing that. So the recommendation would be to remove it from your traffic bylaw.
Okay.
All right. Now,
Why would we have a separate speed bylaw? Why not just have it involved with a traffic
Because-
bylaw and only have one?
because provincial legislation mandated that you have a separate bylaw
Okay.
strictly to deal with that, because that's where the province, because don't forget at this point, once the municipality sets these reduced speed zones, this bylaw then is enforceable by RCMP or a CSO. And so they don't want it convoluted with other bylaws.
So the speed bylaw is
You-
enforced by RCMP.
This was never legal.
Okay.
The bylaw was just, somebody thought, let's just reduce the things, thinking they could. Municipalities did not have jurisdiction to just change the speed zones. You just didn't have the ability to. And the province did change, the province did change that. I forget what year they changed it, but the province
Yeah.
did allow for municipalities to take ownership of speed zones. However, a separate bylaw, clearly it must have been in 19. So in 19, the speed zone bylaw came into effect. The problem that enforcing this is the huge amount of signage
Signage.
that is required because of the reduced speed zones. And so after traffic bylaw is addressed, not that we're enforcing speeding tickets anyway. However, we had been put on unofficial notice that our signage is not appropriate to our reduced speed zones.
Okay.
And we were looking at humongous amounts of signs that were going to be needed to be in place. So council may want to revisit that bylaw at a later date. So anything that's talking about the speed limits should just be
So
removed.
9.2
So
is out.
9.1, 9.2 is out. 9.4 is out.
Is 9.4 out?
No person shall travel at a speed greater than 50 kilometers an hour on any municipal highway road within the boundaries of Winnipeg Beach, so it's a speed zone. It needs to go into the speed zone bylaw.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So the speed limits, so again, Highway Traffic Act dictates the speeds set out in place.
Okay.
If you want to deviate from that, so there's no point in normal residential roads, it's 50 kilometers no matter where they're 50 kilometers. In the city, every street is 50 kilometers, right? For the most part. So if you're just leaving it as the regular speed limit zone. There's no need to put any provision in your traffic bylaw that you're not enforcing that section anyway,
That's right.
too,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
right?
9.3, no vehicle should be driven on a sidewalk or boulevard, but may be driven over an approach or sidewalk crossing. Yes? It's fine?
Yeah.
Is that going to have a level of enforcement? We don't have to determine what the enforcement is, I'm just putting ease by where we may want to revisit sections for enforcement. Or if, so if someone's parked on there, it says shall, no vehicle shall, but now there is a vehicle on a sidewalk or boulevard. What do you want us to do? Like, is that, do we want a piece of enforcement? And if so, I'll just put an E beside it for now.
I would say so.
Yeah, because we do have the issue of people parking down the sidewalk on,
Fair.
is that still Stitt?
Yep.
Or,
Stitt
yeah,
and-
Stitt running parallel to the park?
And they park on
Yeah,
crosswalks too,
yeah.
in front of parkways.
Yeah, I just want to mark
Yeah.
areas we, that would be perfect.
9.5 is running extension cords onto a sidewalk. We're good with that? Enforcement?
Okay, I have a question on this, or when it's been 40 below for 6 days in a row and somebody needs to get their car going, I would prefer to see a time limit on this, not longer than. Or not during a period of snow removal. Like, so I guess, what's the issue with it? Maybe I'm not understanding the issue, and if somebody's gonna say somebody can trip, yeah, well, people need to look where they're going. I'm sorry, I've been wanting to have a reason to say that for months.
Well, the curbs, I mean, we've got lots of opportunity.
The real, again, you mentioned, the real issue is snow removal.
Yeah.
We have a couple of, 2 or 3 people that use extension cords in the winter downtown, and they extend over the sidewalk, and if you get a substantial amount of snow, and the guy's not paying attention, and he brings the sidewalk thing along, and he,
Yeah,
you know what I
getting
mean?
snowed
Like-
on, I
And
wasn't
it's-
thinking
yeah.
that they're getting, if there's more snow, they're gonna bring the snow.
Yeah, but
Okay,
if it's, yeah, and it's been,
okay.
there's a few downtown, there's more than a few.
So in reference to this then, is it just primarily a problem in the winter? Is there any ever concern in the summer? And when we look at enforcement, is this, again, what does that look like? Does it mean
Unplugging
that
it.
Public Works will not take responsibility to damaged
Yeah.
cords? Or
Yeah.
are we actually doing a different level of enforcement on that?
I think it's the same as the bridges.
Yeah,
You know, you gotta bring, if you've got your car plugged in and it's snowing, then just wait till, be cognizant that they're gonna clear the snow and undo your cord. You know what I mean?
so if a cord's not undone,
We're not responsible for
We're not
damage.
we're just
for it.
saying we're not responsible for damage.
Right.
So then I think that should be, because we're not gonna be doing other enforcement. We're
Right.
just saying we're not responsible for
For damage.
damages.
Yeah.
Is
I mean,
there-
is there any safety concern for the public works staff or our equipment
No.
if
Yeah,
the
I
cord
don't
is
know.
there?
I don't know.
Can
If
we
a
maybe
cord
check with
gets
Joe on that
wrapped
and we'll revisit that one?
Well, yeah, if the cord
Yeah.
gets wrapped up in
Electrical shock.
machinery,
Yeah.
if it gets split, is it possibility of shock for
Yeah.
a passenger, someone who's walking by? That's what I'm wondering about.
So then do we want to look at them, then I think we should be looking at enforcement on
Enforcement?
that one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put in-
I think the enforcement is just that it'll be removed. So can we just say,
No, I'm just
No.
putting an E
She's
under
gonna be- we're
enforcement,
gonna
because if you
discuss
want
enforcement
to,
later.
you may choose to want to put penalties under there, you may want to choose. We may want to, we may want to add in the event cords are placed in their public works will not, the town will not be responsible for any damages. I might want to look at that. I'll take a look at the damage areas.
yeah, I ran over my extension cord once in my driveway with my snow blower. It was messy. It took a while to get the whole thing untangled from around the hoppers.
So we may want to then look at if it's not like a site, repairs to equipment.
But if you got someone who,
The other
if you
thing,
got someone who's low income and they're putting their extension cord across the street just to keep a car from stalling out, they're not gonna be able to afford repairs to our equipment if they do that.
I'm sorry, but a person's income should not affect whether or not they're expected to abide by bylaws and enforcement happen.
The folks who are putting cords across their sidewalk, do they not have alternative places to park behind the
Nope.
building or beside the building?
The two right off the bat that pop into my head, I've never seen a problem with it, but it's been there for forever. And they just, because they plug in and their car's on the street, so they have to, there's no other way to do it. They just plug in the extension cord out of the house and into the car. And it's across the sidewalk. Now, I've never seen, Public Works has never ever had a problem with it, because it's been going on for a long time.
Can we talk to Public Works? Although we're not making, we can't do this bylaw just for one or two people we
Yeah.
don't like.
But it's similar.
It's a bylaw for the next 10 years.
It's similar to a, what do they call it in Winnipeg when they say there's snow removal? You have like, when you're on whatever that, yeah, so the onus should be on the homeowner, that if it's snowing, then wait till it's cleared or whatever before you plug your car, because you only really need 4 hours to plug your car. The people that plug it in all night for 3 days, that's ridiculous. You know, and it's a block heater, it's not an interior warmer.
But if we allow it, then, and we've got no restriction on how long, like,
I don't.
you shouldn't be, it's like the bridges. If it just,
I
you're
know,
supposed
I
to
know,
be
I know.
lifting your bridges, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be having extension cords running across sidewalks
No, I
or
think
public
that's dangerous.
spaces,
That's dangerous.
regardless of your income.
So if we look at I guess, so the piece when we look at enforcement,
Okay.
it comes down to, is there going to be repercussion? Or are we just saying we're not taking responsibility for damages incurred?
But then but are we then risking, as discussed, damage to our equipment? Health and safety issue for our employees? If we're acknowledging that but extension cords aren't that expensive. If I can get away with it for, half the summer before the equipment rips up my cord, I'll just go out and buy another cord. So either we have repercussions
Okay.
that are more than just, we're not responsible for damaging your cord. I just don't think that's enough, because I'll just go out and buy another cord and hope that, it's another month or two before you run over my cord again.
So let's look at some kind of enforcement.
Okay, I'll just put it.
Just put
beside it.
enforcement.
Okay,
Do it.
perfect.
9.6. Read it again, folks. Thoughts?
I got a couple. This has come up before. I don't know if, I believe we are clearing parking spaces at 2 local businesses that are using town property or property the town is leasing. And we are authorizing them to use. And I believe we're clearing the snow. And I don't believe there's a chargeback to either of the businesses. Yeah,
Okay.
that relate to this, because we're not charging back. So this whole thing, the way it's worded, I think it needs to be enforced. I also think it needs to be reviewed annually or with change in ownership of business. I don't think it should be a permanent ongoing thing.
Okay. Other thoughts? Kozlowski, Councillor Houle.
Well, it should stay there.
Pardon me?
Well, I don't think we should change it.
Okay. So what it's saying is businesses within the boundaries and with a written contractual agreement with the town shall be allowed to maintain customer parking spaces on municipal-owned property or boulevards at the discretion of council, and provide the proper signage to be erected by Public Works Utility. So that means any of the businesses can come to council and say, we want some parking spaces in front of our building for customer parking.
They can ask.
They can ask. And Councillor Jarvis?
If you're gonna allow them to do that, I don't think you can put in discretional. How are you gonna say you can have it, but
Well, you can't.
something else you can't?
If
So
we say what-
discretion's gotta come out of there for, should never be a discretion of council.
No.
You either can do it or you don't.
That's right. So if we say yes, that means we're saying
Every
yes.
parking spot in town times, every business times 2.
Well, it doesn't say 2 parking spots. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4.
I thought, yeah, maybe I'm
No.
wrong. I thought I saw somewhere it said
Be
2.
allowed to maintain customer parking spaces on municipal-owned property or boulevards.
But
So there's not a limit. Unless council wants to decide on a limit. But then we have to be consistent with that through through.
exactly, I would like the discretion out of it entirely.
Okay. So we can keep discretion in, we can keep discretion out. Council has to decide that. We can say it's okay, say it's not okay for any business. If we say it's okay, we have to understand we're saying it's okay for every business. Councillor Kozlowski, you had a thought?
No, it's,
Can I throw another stick in this book?
No, as
I'll
long
come
as
back.
they're-
No. Councillor Kozlowski, you said
no, it'll come back to me.
it'll come back to you. Councillor Gendron.
I don't think we have a big enough parking issue. It was very loud and clear by the business owners that they didn't want us to tamper with parking. I don't think we should be providing parking for local businesses. How do we keep track of, what do we charge them for snow maintenance? So, because it's clearly, they're responsible for the maintenance of those spaces and the upkeep. Do we clear around them, and it's their job to come out and shovel them?
Councillor Jarvis?
Here's my other stick in this book. When you have a patio that takes up, say, 2 or 3 or 4 parking spots, how does that affect the other ones? Do you know what I mean? So if one business says, look, I want my parking spots to be down here because I'm gonna put my patio and you're gonna extend the sidewalk. You know, so I think it's gonna conflict with that bylaw as well.
Councillor Houle, thoughts?
Yeah. Kind of turn it around a bit. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think we can do this.
Councillor Kozlowski?
Yeah, I agree that the discretion of council, it's treat everybody the same way. Don't treat individual restaurants that they want parking here and there. Everybody's treated the same way, and take that out of their discretion of council.
Okay, so you're saying that people can apply for it, but it shouldn't be at the discretion of council? And I think Councillor Houle, you're saying take the whole thing out
Yeah.
and not allow it for anybody? And Councillor Jarvis, you're saying take the whole thing out and not allow it to anybody, or you just?
I've kind of always been on that position, yeah.
Okay, and Councillor Gendron, you're saying,
We already have an arrangement with 2 existing businesses.
I'm
Park
sure.
Place is using space on our leased property, if I'm not mistaken, and the spots beside what used to be Ford Grocery are actually on town property.
Ford Grocery.
On the
All right.
south side of the old Ford Grocery building. There's, yeah.
And your position?
Okay, so,
Well, I'm just saying we already have, I believe we already have 2 arrangements in place. So, one of them is on the leased property. Madam CAO.
I just wanted to clarify, when it's stating the discretion of council, it's very similar to like a variance or a conditional use application. There's an application that comes before council and council gets to vote on it. So the term "at the discretion of council" is normal terminology because each case is different, just like every variance is different, every conditional use is different. And so it is at council's discretion to approve, not approve, approve with conditions, right? So just to make sure that the discretion of council, it's very similar. It's standard wording and it's very similar in other forms of legislation. Like
Which would then address my thinking of losing 2 spots to every business on Main Street is completely different than allowing
People that
the
park at
grocery store to use a strip of our leased land for parking. Or
get groceries.
the spots butting right up beside Ford's Grocery, or the old Ford Grocery building, those 3 spots butting right up against their building versus 3 spots downtown. So when you put it that way and that is what the discretion is, then that, like I was just raising those because before we wiped this right out, I didn't know if everyone was aware that we have 2 situations already in place.
So I'm wondering if we can or should rewrite this such that we put in the bylaw that the 2 grocery stores are able to lease that, or no? That we should put this in terms of no restaurants on Main Street.
No business.
No businesses
No
on Main Street.
businesses on Main Street.
Or I mean, now that, it was much like at the variance meeting last week where I had to stress, every variance this isn't a precedent, every variance request is on its own merit. My understanding is the CAO is trying to say the same thing about this. When we use the word discretion, it's that every application would be looked at on their own merit, not a blanket yay or nay.
And again, council, you can choose to have whatever you want in your bylaws. If you want to use the same process that an application has to be brought forward and there's a public hearing, very similar, you can choose to do that. Like you can choose to do whatever you're looking at. I mean, it's effective governance, right, is working with your community. And so if we're looking at removing the entire clause and there are existing, I don't know if I could say contractual agreements that I may be able to find. If there are no contractual agreements, but at some point, whether by resolution or by something else is stating that that's what's happening in those 2 locations, what is council saying going forward? Are you saying that is no longer permitted at those locations, or that's what we need to determine?
No, I think our concern has been the number of businesses on Main Street and the small length of Main Street. And so not wanting to get into every business saying, well, they have 2 spots, so we should have 2 spots, so everybody else should have 2 spots. I think that's just going to make it messy. And it will be at the discretion of council, but there's not a chance this council or any other council should say yes to that business, but no to that business. So I'm thinking, given the parking problem that we have downtown Winnipeg Beach, that we don't allow for any kind of parking on what they call municipal boulevards, particular to any business in the downtown area. But for sure, any business, you know, if Domo expands and puts a grocery store in there and wants some space that happens to be towns, put a parking lot in, absolutely, the discretion of council, we should be open to that. And I'm not saying, please, Facebook folks, I'm not saying that Domo is expanding or building a grocery store. I was trying to use an example that was way out in left field. That's not what's happening, but all I'm saying is let's leave some room for some eventualities that might happen. But from what I understand from this council is that we are concerned about the parking situation on Main Street, and we don't want to open up a can of worms in terms of giving every business 1 or 2 or 3 spots. That's how I'm seeing it, but I'm open to hearing from other council members. Councillor Jarvis.
Do we have some sort of, you know how like certain municipalities have like local urban districts? Like we don't have, there's nothing that says like, this is District 1 or District 2.
No.
So in the future, would we be able to maybe establish a district
Those are LUDs usually
Yeah.
for,
where we could say parking is restricted in this district?
oh, I see.
So you may look at, LUD is more dealing with annexation and
Yeah, I know, but
property. So
there has to be some sort of a term that we could come up with.
There can be, so you have your zoning bylaw as a bit of reference, for commercial area. You can look at setting ward systems, however, elections, but there's definitely an impact by election, as each ward would then be one. Like you wouldn't be elected at large, right? Only your ward could vote for that ward. And so to make such a small, if we're really talking about Main Street going to that extent, I don't think it makes sense to look at having a ward system or anything along those lines. Like if you're looking at, again, part of like with the traffic bylaw, although we're not quite there yet, and this is the beginning, right, is when we look at parking, ultimately, instead of having a second parking bylaw, you would be amalgamating your traffic bylaw would be including your parking. And so you can identify streets or what, like with bylaw that say only 2-hour parking, but other areas are not 2-hour parking, like you can establish that criteria through there.
So
Councillor
is that,
Jarvis?
is that how they, let's not make this a question. Prospect between May 15th and September 15th is one way from Ash to Park. Like how is that written into the bylaw, or can we do something?
It is.
I know, but can we put it in somewhere, say that on, say, these following streets, parking is prohibited, or whatever,
Yes,
Yes.
and give it a time frame.
yes.
Yep.
So
Councillor Jen.
my suggestion, and going along with what Councillor Jarvis was expressing there, businesses within the boundary of the town of Winnipeg Beach, excluding the area bounded by whatever street there, whatever
Hamilton,
street
Murray.
there, whatever street there, whatever the street there. So what do we want to do? How far do we want to go?
I'd support that. From Hamilton to Murray, from Main Street to Stitt.
Hamilton
No business will be afforded.
Slow down.
to Stitt. So bound on the south by Hamilton, north by Murray, east by Maine, west by Stitt.
So when we look at all of this and we want to make it simple, we
Yeah.
could have businesses within the boundaries of the town of Winnipeg Beach may make application for customer parking spaces on municipally owned property or boulevards, providing, providing the areas identified are not conflicting to other provisions of the bylaw. So if you put a no parking area there, then it says no parking,
I
so
can
then you
support
can't
that.
make application.
Yep.
And, okay, and then would we, where is it? And so then Schedule B agreement to operate parking spaces on municipal owned property, could that schedule on page 14, Schedule B, indicate the areas that you cannot make application on?
Correct.
Yeah. And then that way, if we ever change it, want to expand it or lessen it, we don't need to change the bylaw, we just need to change Schedule B. Okay.
So you're
businesses within the boundaries of the town of Winnipeg Beach may make written application to the town of Winnipeg Beach for customer parking spaces on municipal owned property and boulevards, period.
No, sorry, you have to add or leased, because we don't own that property at the Bird Park. Sorry,
Or
Pat.
leased, okay? Notwithstanding. Restricted areas. Notwithstanding any restricted areas identified in the bylaw.
In Schedule B.
Schedules.
And then in Schedule B, we'll just have the restricted areas outlined, which is
Yep.
downtown.
And Schedule B. How's that? And then that way
Yep.
it takes away all of this other
Yeah.
stuff.
And then do we need to address in here existing arrangements? Or will you just check to see if there is anything and reach out to those businesses?
Yeah, I mean, so what would council like to do with the existing?
What are
So
these?
there's two that
Two
you're
that I'm
saying
aware of.
are-
Do we have the condos, or is there an arrangement with the condos and snow clearing and that kind of stuff? or-
That's all, none of it's ours.
That's not
Oh,
Which condos?
Oh,
That's not our property.
I thought there was a street
The
that
first section.
you're right, there's been
Middle drive.
controversy. There's a controversy about which drive the condo owns and which one we own and who's responsible for clearing it. Is that what you're referring to?
But
Yeah.
that's a road, so, and I believe that we've made it clear that the town will only plow our portion of the road, like where we will be
Okay,
plowing.
so we don't own any of the land that the parking is on?
No, it's just
Okay.
a small little, if you look on
Just
the
a
map,
section of
it's just a
road?
very small
drive.
little
Yeah,
entranceway.
that came up over snow clearing.
Yeah.
Was what
Okay.
that- Yeah, not
Okay.
parking. So I would like to see us to maintain the two that we currently
So
have,
we're talking about the ones at Ford Groceries?
Ford and Park Place.
and Park Place.
I would like to see us
Is
maintain them,
Fort
but we do
Grocery
need to
still
formally.
open? Like, is
No.
Well,
that-
no, it's not, it is, but then do we also want to look at this, Schedule B stating that it must be reapplied for with change in ownership?
I think we should.
Ooh.
Because I'll tell you why I'm thinking that. Ford has changed ownership. I don't even think they're using that side piece anymore, but we have signs up there.
Well, they're using it for that little, they got a pawn shop in
No, I
there.
don't think they're using that parking. I don't-
Sometimes they are.
They are, right?
And I think the reason for it is because they're on the highway.
Okay.
And so parking can be a problem in there.
Well,
And so right now, it's used as a thrift shop that's open on the weekends, and so parking on the highway is really difficult. But if they sell and another little grocery store goes in there, then, you know, because it's parked on the highway in the summers, I think that we can maintain our agreement with them no matter what that business is.
okay, no, but the Schedule B includes the individual's names, so it's not just a business. So we do need, it needs to be reviewed and reapplied for with change in.
Okay, well then it's a
With
good
change in
point.
ownership.
That's a good point.
Okay, well, it's not a
Okay.
moot point if somebody is selling a business and advertising that it comes complete with 3 parking spots, compliments of the town. So the person that is signing in this agreement needs to understand that they can't automatically transfer the agreement. The agreement is not transferable.
And so
Like,
we want
we could put a
application,
bus stop there, you know.
It's non-transferable.
It's not transferable. How about her too?
excuse me. approved application is not transferable. In ownership. So then with those spaces, there was the issue of maintenance, and what is council's position on that? Are we adding anything in there,
They're responsible for maintenance, correct?
Has that been the agreement so to date?
or? I have yet, I don't have an agreement, I haven't seen any, I'd like to find out
Schedule fees,
other agreements. No, I'm just saying for myself, like if I look
Yeah.
under our agreements folder here, I'm not saying they don't exist, I'm just saying,
I just think we should go with what status quo is right now.
It says that they have to maintain in Schedule B, that's what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says that there has to be the associated cost to be appropriately charged back to the said business. So in the event that we have to get involved in it with Public Works, then we can charge it back to them.
okay. And so then we would need a level of enforcement to set up a fee schedule?
Yeah, it says, erected by Public Works foreman or town administrator.
So,
Council General.
yeah, well, I'm the one that raised that comment first. In the issue of, Park Place, the criminal has to go through his lot to get at the area we're responsible for clearing.
So,
So I don't know if charging back for snow clearing is necessarily
Well, that's-
appropriate as opposed to other maintenance, like the cost of putting up signs, which is already done now, so in these two cases, that's already done, but the cost of putting up the signs, the initial setup, but, and they're clearing the street beside Ford Grocery, and that's part of our street that needs to be maintained.
that's why I'm
As part of
saying,
snow
can
clearing.
we take a look at what status quo already is, because apparently they've already figured it out, so Public Works and
Yeah.
the businesses have figured it out, so instead of us sitting here trying to reinvent the wheel and coming up with something different, they've probably come up with something that works for them, so why don't we find out what that is?
Okay.
And then if it seems reasonable, that'll become part of the bylaw.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to make up something new here.
Okay. Yep,
They figured something out already.
okay.
9.7, no blocking of streets, avenues, or lanes by any vehicle.
What's the service vehicle referring to? They're different, let's see if it's in.
The piece that the provision of the bylaw prohibited standing or parking shall not apply to public service
I know,
vehicles.
I know.
So if it's just saying service vehicles, is that just,
What's a service vehicle? Oh, like a repairman?
Yeah.
I guess, yes.
Well, part of the problem here is if you go back to definitions, the definition of a lane on page 3 is a street not more than 6.2 meters in width or a roadway leading into public or private premises so as to permit the egress and ingress of vehicles. So that means someone's driveway. So no blocking of streets, avenues, or driveways by any vehicles, including service vehicles, right? And the next one, no parking in any lane in the town of Winnipeg Beach. A lane is a driveway. Are we suggesting that people can't park in their driveways?
Or block their driveway on the street? Well, if I want to block my driveway because I don't want somebody coming down my driveway, I should be able to block my driveway.
That's why I was, yeah, the definitions, I think we're gonna have to, when we finish all of this, just pay attention to how many of our bylaws are saying highways, how many of our bylaws are saying roads and lanes. So if we agree with 9.7 and 9.8, that means that people can't be parking in their own driveways. And I'm not sure that was the intent of this. I'm sure that the intent was people shouldn't be parking in their back lanes if they're only 6.2 meters, but I don't know, because I wasn't here when this was written.
Can't we just put driveway in the definitions?
When you get there.
Yeah, like, and then that, so if it's, ergo, if it says laneway, then it can't be a driveway. If driveway is considered a definition.
That's why taking the definitions of the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act, but coming up with our own bylaws is not a good fit, right? So does 9.7 stay in?
I'd say so.
Can we revisit 9.7 and 9.8 once we've established our definitions?
Well, if we understand lane to be a street not more than 6.2 meters in width, I'm assuming that's what a back lane is.
No. Yeah, but you're talking 20 feet. 20 feet wide, that's pretty substantial. 6 meters. Meters 39 inches. Substantial roadway.
Oh.
And we've mentioned this before, and again, even during boardwalk days, you couldn't have got a fire truck or an ambulance through some of these
Yeah, I
laneways down
know.
here. Like they were blocking them everywhere.
So if we know that although the bylaw says no blocking of streets or lanes, and no parking in any lane, and it's happening anyway,
Why aren't we taking it out?
so are we then enforcing that? Like what, that's,
No.
Well, then the question becomes, why is it in here?
But if you take it out, it's a, that's almost an admission of free-for-all, just park anywhere you want.
Okay, so it's not either or. But if we're saying no parking in lanes, you're saying any road that's
Blocking the laneway. Certain laneways, yeah, I think,
9.8, no parking in any lane in the town of Winnipeg Beach. And you're saying, and this is saying a lane is defined as
What?
any roadway that's 6.2 meters. That means nobody's parking on side streets.
They were,
So I think that what council needs to do is think about where do we want them parking and not parking, as opposed to saying either yes to 9798 or no to 9798. Let's figure out, I don't know what their intent was at the time, but maybe we have to figure out what our own intent is. Where do we want people parking and where do we want people not parking?
I'll just say, and then Gene, I think that their intent is our intent. I think that they recognize that, like what I saw on that weekend is that there had to be, in the center block, in the T-bone laneway, there had to be 6, 7 cars obstructing travel through that laneway
I know.
in every direction. And again, it's heaven forbid if we need to get an ambulance in there, it's not getting in there. And sorry, Gene, go ahead.
No. So, is there some little gray area in there that, like okay, so somebody says, my neighbor keeps parking their car in the back lane, calls the bylaw officer. It's in our bylaw. The bylaw officer goes out and just says, I've received a complaint, we have a bylaw that says you're not supposed to be parking in your back lane. Like, and that's the enforcement, that's as far as the enforcement goes. So, but at least by leaving it in there, if the whole idea of being able to evolve with enforcement and fines happens, then it's in there.
I agree.
And at least it's there for the bylaw officer to go out and say, your neighbor's shown me pictures from 4 days in a row where you or somebody at your property is parking in the back lane, and I'm here to let you know it's against the bylaw.
I get that. What I was saying was lane in here is defined as a street that's 6.2 meters. We're talking about not wanting someone to be parked in back lanes.
And that's why,
so-
yeah.
and so what I'm saying is, let's us talk about what our intent is, and then make sure that this reads to meet our intent, because right now it doesn't. So we can define, if we want to, a back lane, and then say no parking in back lanes, if that's our intent. Is that what we want? And what else is our intent in terms of what do we want legislation to say? Do we want to say no blocking of streets, avenues, or lanes by any vehicle? Probably. If lane is a back lane, as opposed to what this definition says. Do we want to say no parking in any back lane in the town of Winnipeg Beach? Is that what we're saying?
I think so.
I want to hear from
9.8.
Councillor Kozlowski, I want to hear from Councillor Houle. Are we saying no parking in back lanes?
What do you mean, like constricting the whole lane? Because I got a garage and I park sideways in the lane, I'm constricting anyway, and it's my property. But I'm parking
Well,
not in the lane.
if you're parking in your own property, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you're parking in the back lane, that's not okay.
Oh, that's right, and I know it's to constrict the back.
We gotta consider
Right.
service levels too.
And
People drop
the other
off.
day too, we had a cement truck on the street blocking the whole street. So you had to go come in from the other way, right? But I'm sure if there was an emergency vehicle, you would move that truck pretty quick.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. What's the intent of council? Are we saying there should be no parking in any back lane?
Right.
That's what you're saying, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Councillor Houle, what are you saying?
I'm saying yes, but I'm concerned about some of the restaurants that have deliveries in the back of back lanes. It's a concern for me.
That could be
So-
worded.
So there's a difference between parking and stopping.
Well,
So you can have them stop and unload. 'Cause I think later on in here it talks about being able to stop to unload things.
as long as there's something in there.
Yeah, there is. Any other concerns in terms of not parking in back lanes? Councillor Jandra?
My issue's not, I think, no blocking of streets, avenues, or lanes by any vehicles, including service vehicles. I think that's a bit of a problem. Hydro's in a back lane, it's blocking it, they need to be doing their work. I think it should actually say excluding service vehicles on both of them temporarily. I think a service vehicle should be allowed to temporarily park in the back lane if they're working on hydro
Okay.
pole, or
TV.
we've had a sewer line break and there's, yeah.
So we'll come back to that in a minute. Can we finish up the back lane thing? Or you-
I want it in the back lane as well, though, please.
Pardon me?
I'd like it in the back lane as well.
Right.
Excluding service vehicles.
Okay. Councillor Kozlowski, how are you on parking in the back lane?
Yeah, no vehicles parked in back lanes at all,
Okay.
again, and I agree with Councillor
So-
John, unless it's, TV, hydro, whatever, they're doing
So
work.
9.8 reads, no parking in any back lane in the town of Winnipeg Beach excluding service vehicles. And there's something later on that talks about service vehicles that says when they are performing a job, as opposed to, I happen to own a service vehicle.
So that's when we look at, if we're looking at service vehicles. It does say, or any public utility, if such vehicle has the owner's name painted thereon. So when any public utility would mean Manitoba Hydro under service.
Where is that, Sharon? Sorry.
So under section 5.3. Right, so we're saying provisions of this bylaw prohibiting standing or parking shall not apply to, and then we say service vehicles, so instead of saying does not apply to service vehicles, we would make this legislation, if we're saying service vehicles have the right to park in a back lane, we would list 9.8 under that provision.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make,
Yes,
does
yeah.
that make sense?
Yes.
So
It's saying the
so
same
the
thing, but if you're
exceptions,
going to do
so
something.
the exceptions will be under the service vehicles clause,
Okay. Yeah.
not keep adding it
Yeah.
throughout. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we want 9.8,
And 9.7?
9.7. And that's why like including, so, but this is saying including service vehicles, but no blocking, so no parking in any lane to to me, if it's a service vehicle, it's more or less blocking, right? It's blocking, they're not really parking, they're performing
blocking.
work, so they're blocking.
It's not
Yeah.
unattended.
I wouldn't advise council if you have no parking in any back lane in the town of Winnipeg Beach.
That's right. That's redundant, right?
Because if a guy works for Manitoba Hydro and.
But is he
brings
parking
his-
or is he actually, parking to me that designates unattended vehicle. You parked it, you're going to the beach.
Could be in the house.
Yeah, he could
But
be up
that's what
on
I'm
a
saying,
pole.
so if you have someone who works for Manitoba Hydro who gets to take a company truck home,
Right, that's why there's a provision somewhere, I forget where it is, where it says where that service vehicle is in the act of
Exactly.
commission
Working.
of
all
working.
right, okay, so then we can include, okay, so we'll put 9.7 and 9.8 under there. And I'm gonna exclude the including service vehicles. So if there is any parking or blocking of street, is there any level of enforcement, council?
I think that might come under the
Ticket and tow.
discussion. Yeah.
So we will want, okay, I'm just giving a little.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes.
I'm just
Please.
marking,
Sorry, yes.
For enforcement.
No overnight RV parking on any public parking lot except during town-approved events and with council or council designated approval. Can we say no overnight RV parking on any downtown street and public parking lot? And or any other public parking lot? Because I'm thinking about Main Street. How we have RVs that are parking on Main Street overnight all the time.
And people in cars. All the time.
But I remember a couple of years ago, we had an RV that was parked down in front of the hotel for like a week or two.
Yeah, there's a few people.
right, but that's not what this is saying. It's saying except during town-approved events and with council or council designate approval. So,
That's my understanding of that is probably that it's leaning towards the idea of wonder shows,
Correct.
having RVs parked here during
Correct.
boardwalk days.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree.
And they're parked on the streets as well, which is fine. Right?
Okay, so, do we, like, to me, this reads, you can't park your RV in the parking lot over by the railway tracks for an overnight stay,
Correct.
unless you get permission.
unless you get
Permission.
right.
And it's a town event.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying no overnight RV parking on any public parking lot or downtown street, except during town-approved events and with council or council designated approval. Because oftentimes with wonder shows, they're parked on the side streets with RVs.
So why are we just saying downtown? We don't care if somebody parks an RV on Prospect and sleeps in there for 2 weeks?
Okay, so how would you like to word it?
I agree.
So how would you like to word it? Because that's different from somebody parking on Park or Hazel or Oak
Anywhere,
or
any
Ash.
street in Winnipeg Beach.
No, so that's what I'm saying. Do we have an issue? And I don't necessarily have an issue with it, I'm just raising the thought
no,
while we're
I
talking
know.
about it is, are we okay with RVs being parked in front of somebody's house for the summer? While grandma and grandpa are here for the summer? Is it a concern? Is it not a concern?
What do people think?
I've never heard of it being a concern yet.
Not outside of downtown, neither
That
have I.
doesn't mean it won't be.
Well,
Can't do that
except-
in the city of Winnipeg.
Might have started something wild.
Except on
Yeah.
Main Street a couple of times.
So we're
It's not
going to just
usually a
excluding
problem.
it to the downtown area and our parking lots?
Yeah, and town parking.
Yeah.
I see,
So this is just making reference, this doesn't have any reference of any road whatsoever. It's just saying no overnight RV parking on any public parking lot.
Right, but Mayor Jackson wanted to add or downtown streets. That's why I raised the issue of streets in
But-
reference to what she wanted to add.
public parking lot, I think, says what we're talking about here. Like, the town parking lot, Main Street, that's public parking.
Those are parking lots.
That's not a lot. Main Street is
So
a,
then include downtown streets.
give it the downtown streets again. And I mean, I could put it in perspective, yeah, I see it all the time.
How about the 4 streets that, let's be
Yep.
consistent with defining our downtown streets of Main, Stitt,
Hamilton.
Hamilton, and Murray. Or in definitions, we could just have that and then we could just keep referring it to the
Except
downtown
during
area.
town-approved events and with council or council designate approval.
Mhm.
Correct.
So you're saying people can park on the downtown things on the
With
other-
council.
With council
With
approval.
council approval.
And during weather shows.
Okay. I see. Okay.
Nine, 10. All dead-end roadways or streets within the town of Winnipeg Beach that dead end east of Highway 9 at the lake shall be deemed and designated no parking zones.
The whole
So-
street?
So it seems to me a lot of our streets
Dead end of the lake.
dead end at the lake. And so, like, all of our side streets, like,
Everything,
everything does.
all our numbered streets.
Alder,
With a
hazel,
couple of
spruce,
exceptions,
oak,
yeah.
ash, elm. Like, they all dead end at the lake. So I'm not sure I understand what the intent of this was.
I do. The intent of it was so that cars don't park, so just, I'm gonna give you an example of a street at,
Poplar.
no, I'm not touching Poplar, Doug. At 7th, there's concrete pillars where it dead ends at the waterway, okay?
Like Maple.
Like 7th, there's another one I'm not touching, Pam. 7th, when you go east of Prospect,
Yeah?
it dead ends and there's concrete pillars running north-south.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that area, you can't park at those
Can we just put up
curves.
no parking signs on those 2 or 3 places?
It's not 2 or 3, it's every street. It's 7th, it's 5th,
3rd, 1st, Pine,
yeah.
Poplar,
Mhm.
Birch, Maple.
Maybe no parking signs would be easier.
Oh, we're talking 9, no parking signs.
And I think some of them already have them.
Yeah.
I thought so too.
But people are parking there.
Yeah, they are.
When you got fireworks going on, both prospects, both lanes are filled with cars.
Yeah, that's,
That's not the dead end piece of the.
No,
That's
well,
And they're really not,
That's
they're
a
not
whole
parking
other-
there.
So
They're on
like the
Panther.
set, like
They're there
Seventh
for
would
20
be the
minutes.
pier.
Yeah,
yeah.
So people park in that dead end area,
Yeah.
right? Because you're
Yeah.
coming off of Prospect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like you're hanging your
Yeah.
right. That area, we're
So
saying
it's-
it's no parking?
So it's right here at the end of each
Yeah.
of these.
Because sometimes there's 6 or 8 cars parked in there, especially on 7th.
And
They'll
so
park
are
on
we
both sides.
saying there is no parking in that area? And are we, so there, that has become, and the reason I'm asking is because if we're having that in there, that there are no parking zones, then there needs to be some level of enforcement or it'll just
Yeah,
continue
signage.
as it is right now. And is that what council?
And if you got people from the west end who are wanting to go to the pier for sunset, they've got to park somewhere, I guess up on Prospect.
yeah, I don't know why it doesn't make sense to me, to be honest with you, that it's no parking in there.
Like, why
People
is
want
it-
to access the beach, they're pulling in and
Access
they're
the pier.
parking
Yeah.
and
So why is it a problem?
I was
What?
just,
No, that's what I'm saying,
it's
but,
just a problem
Well,
that you want to
it's-
touch maple or poplar. That was my only
but
problem.
does anybody here understand why it's a problem? Like why they put it in as a bylaw in the first place? Has there historically been a problem there?
Well, people probably complained and they didn't want cars parked there. Hey, I'm just trying to help out.
Yeah. Maybe partying and, long lunches, drinking parties.
That's a whole other,
Yeah,
that's a
that's
whole
a-
bylaw. but yeah.
Like they're doing it my bike ride today again, I mean, I go down in Alder, Laurel, and you can see the signs, all the boat trailers and the cars and the trucks are all parked on Prospect, or parked up Laurel, parked up Alder, because they won't pay the fee to go in, and the parking lot's empty. But you can't park anywhere, so if you're coming to visit somebody, you can't park in the laneway, now you can't park in the street, you gotta park a block and a half away to go visit your grandparents. You know, I mean, it's just,
Okay,
it's kinda
so,
crazy.
sorry, but as far as this goes.
So 9, 10, we don't see any
No,
reason for that.
I don't think there's
Not
any need
helpful.
for it. Anyone else?
So let's take it out. And if
Take
we-
it out, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah, like if we don't have it at the marina, we shouldn't have it on 7.
So then we need to, so if there are any signs, they need to be removed once this is passed.
so then 9.11, all designated parking spaces within the town of Winnipeg Beach must be properly signed and/or have proper pavement markings and shall be for the sole use of only those vehicles displaying a valid permit. Does it make any sense why that's there?
I think it was referenced that you could purchase your own.
No, this
Yes.
is 2017.
It's to do with the accessible parking, I believe.
But that's already covered in,
I made myself a note, 3.15. So hang on, let's go back to 3.15.
That would be a definition.
Yeah, sorry. And then a designated parking space means a space designed by sign or pavement parking as being for the sole use of a vehicle displaying a permit that is located on a highway of public, yeah, and then I just circled it with a question mark, accessible space, is that what that's referring to?
that's 6.5. I mean, it just basically kind of seems to be saying all designated parking spaces within the town has to make sure they properly sign them. And mark the pavement.
I think it would read better if it said all accessible designated parking spaces within the town of Winnipeg Beach must be properly signed and/or have proper pavement markings and shall be for the sole use of only those vehicles displaying a valid permit. It just needs to be added, all accessible designated parking spots.
If that's what you were thinking, it was talking about no parking, Sharon?
Well, no, I'm just thinking,
No, because it's saying that those vehicles must be displaying a valid permit.
But didn't we say that in 6.5? I'm just wondering why this is going to be, why this is necessary.
I would think because 6, placing and maintenance of traffic signs and markings, it would make, if we want to leave that provision in there, that it be removed from general and put in with 6 point.
Mm-hmm.
We have at 6.5, 6.5 doesn't address the fact that it has to have a valid permit.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but we
We were
were
sa-
looking
we were
at adding
adding
that in. So
Oh,
instead
we
of
added
changing that there, we could
We'll just,
take 911 and move it.
Mhm.
got it, yeah. We'll just make sure what's in 911 is incorporated into 6.5?
Yeah.
To 6.5.
Okay.
Okay, we've been at it 2 hours. Can we take a 5-minute break? This is mind-numbing work.
First you're gonna have to mind
That
to now.
hyphenated, mind numbing?
Some mind-numbing work. Don't
Don't
you think?
I think so.
Let's take 5 minutes, get some oxygen into our minds.
Okay, we're back.
We having fun yet? Okay, 10.0, no, pardon me, 10.1. This is about the volunteer fire department. I wonder if that is still true, and do we need to check with the fire department?
Already done
I
that.
was just talking to somebody else, and they said that standard in Manitoba is a green light, not a red light for volunteer fire departments. So, yes, Councillor Gendron.
I spoke to the fire chief, and because it can be ever changing, it was suggested that we indicate a motor vehicle owned by a volunteer member of the Town of Winnipeg Beach Fire Department may be equipped with a lamp as directed by the Highway Traffic Act. That's where it falls under, and because right now it's on, the current rules are visor or dash mount, but if we just put it as directed by the Highway Traffic Act, then if the Highway Traffic Act changes again, we don't need to change the bylaw. But that is where their direction comes from.
What do people think?
I'm not good with that.
So end as directed by Highway Traffic Act, the end? And
Yes, because that would cover when they can use it and when they can't.
Okay. People read 10.2, 3, and 4. Any problems? Parade events, 11.1 to 11.10. I'm assuming people have reviewed this. Any questions or comments or concerns?
Yep.
I was just gonna say 11.4 should read the CAO on approval of council, comma, and on receipt of an application made in accordance. It's just a grammar thing. Councillor Gendron?
11.6, unless so directed by law enforcement officer, peace officer, or a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, no person shall drive a vehicle through a parade. I think we need to include the parade marshal or volunteers appointed by the parade marshal.
What do other people think? Councillor Jarvis?
Yeah, I'm okay with that, but it's just one of these things, like, it's gonna, how do we enforce this, or do we even wanna mention that word?
well, that's.
You know what I mean? Because we had that situation on Boardwalk Gate where there was a couple of cars, and that's how Peter Bjornson got run over by that guy in a Tesla.
Derek Johnson.
Derek Johnson, right? He got run over by the, I went way back in time to Bjornson. They got in the parade. Like, how do you get him out? Like, unless you can enforce it.
Okay, sorry, but let's not amplify this. He wasn't run over, the back of his.
Well, the back
got
was
run
flipped.
over. Yeah, well, we don't want people running with this and him suddenly getting a phone call saying, are you okay?
No, I had that already.
They ran over the back of his foot, and they were allowing traffic up that street. It wasn't properly being marshaled. I was standing at the corner, we were done. The traffic, it wasn't properly blocked off is what led to that problem. What I'm talking about is when they made a decision to let some traffic through at that corner, that was a decision made by volunteers with the parade. So all I'm saying is we need to expand who can allow that to happen, is why I'm wanting to add these people.
Okay, but the question still becomes enforcement? That's what you're.
Yeah, no, I agreed with what Councillor Chandra said, but can we enforce it? If they want to drive through, how do you stop it?
Well, they had barricades up, and that's what stops people from.
I know, we had the same situation last year with another town employee got hit by a car, same deal, and the barricades were there, these
No,
people
she didn't
were.
get hit by a car either. Again, her foot was run
Well,
over.
Oh, okay,
Okay, but,
the car made contact with the person.
right. And so you're asking about enforcement. So what kind of enforcement? I mean, the only enforcement we have is our bylaw officer, right? And so if there's an infraction, Like, do we want to put this under the list of enforcement so we come back and figure out what the enforcement's gonna be? In terms of what the infraction's gonna be?
Sorry, was that a yes? We're putting an E beside that one?
Are we putting an E beside it?
I think we
I would
should.
think so.
Councillor Crabbe?
Theoretically, we're all at risk.
Okay. 12.0.
Sorry, I wasn't done with 11.
Oh, sorry.
11.7.
Mm-hmm.
Unless otherwise directed by law enforcement officer, peace officer, and member of the RCMP, no person shall drive a vehicle on any portion of a highway, can't use highway, street or road that has been roped off, barricaded, or otherwise indicated to traffic. Well, there are barricades up for road closure during events that have the downtown vendor markets, and there are volunteers involved in the vendor market that are responsible for moving barricades to allow traffic to move. So we need to perhaps include or those designated by event coordinator.
Okay.
And then 11.8. Every person driving, leading, or riding a horse shall be subject to all of the provisions of this bylaw. Do we want to make specific reference to the bylaw, piece of the bylaw that refers to the need for the horse diaper or whatever we call those? Or do we just want to leave it as that?
I think we should leave it at that, because it's
7.9.
it's 11.10, 11.10.
No, but I just mean there's other times where Sharon has said we would make reference to the specific clause in the bylaw that we're referring to. I'm just saying it's in the bylaw that they need.
It's saying they're subject to all provisions,
So, okay, so just leave it at that? Okay.
unless you want to.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, now I'm done.
Okay, anything else on that section?
Nope.
12 is about closing highways. We can't close any highways if it says closing streets. So it takes highway out, put streets on. Same as 11.2, pardon me, 12.2. And 12.2 also, the last line, provided temporary no parking signs are erected 24 hours prior to cleanup as opposed to signed. Prior to cleanup. Does that make sense to folks?
So, we've talked about this before as a problem with regard to staffing and get out and actually do snow clearing. Are we gonna actually designate snow roads? Like, does that even need to be in there?
I don't think
Because, so I'm just gonna relate this to what I know living in the city. There's designated snow routes, there's numbers, you get proper notice. Is that even doable here? Does Public Works even think it's necessary to be having that in there? What's the purpose of having that in there? I guess it's my roundabout question. Or it's been a long afternoon,
I know.
long day spent all morning looking at this.
I mean, I would question 12.2 being under closing of like it has
Mhm.
closing of highways, like streets. If we're looking at snow removal, there are several municipalities that just do not allow overnight parking on the streets.
That's right.
Totally is enforced for snow removal. So for a community of this size and recognizing, that there isn't necessarily a set, they start with the high priority streets first and then work their way through the other streets. If council's looking to, that's completely up to council, looking at actually designating streets as zone 1, 2, 3, 4, however you want to do that. I'm just not sure. We're not Brandon,
No.
like it's, and for the most part, the guys get the streets done within a few days.
Yeah. So can we just say no overnight parking on the streets in general?
So I would like to.
And they will be towed during snow clearing?
So, I think that what we would possibly look at is having maybe a different section altogether if we could, because I think there's more than one issue. When it comes to snow, there's more than one issue just about being on the streets. And so like looking at having appropriate bylaw, whether it's incorporated in a traffic bylaw, which it very well may, dealing with parking lots. So if people are plowing their parking lot
Right.
and having huge mounds of snow,
Yeah.
they need to have those removed. And there's nothing stating that people can't plow currently right now, because what we've got is a bit of a snow clearing route policy, but really no bylaw that I've seen
Yeah.
that comes into play with that. And so I would either recommend that we either remove that portion from here or we include a whole snow removal section in the traffic, like dealing with the roads, because there's more than just parking
Yeah.
that has to be addressed with snow clearing.
Absolutely. Councillor Jarvis?
I've never seen snow removal ever a problem downtown. But you do have at least 7 cars that are always gonna be parked on downtown streets overnight, snowstorm regardless, because there aren't enough spaces. So they park, there's 2 or 3 on Murray that park on Murray, there's a couple that park on Center, and I don't know how you're gonna get out of that. There's no place for them to park. Example, the extension cords under the sidewalk, over the sidewalk, they're parked there because they can't park anywhere else. So I don't know, I think you should just remove the clause. I don't see it as a problem.
There is a
Just,
problem.
but, just wait a minute.
Yeah.
There is a problem. Okay,
This
Councillor.
bylaws are not just for downtown, and
No,
there are
right.
problems in other areas, and somebody's lack of parking or too many vehicles for the parking they have is not the town's problem, it's their problem. Snow clearing is the town's issue, and making it safe for our staff and doable in a timely fashion for everybody in town shouldn't rely on making rules for the exception.
Well, and the other thing is this is a bylaw that's gonna be in effect for the next 5 to 10 years. And so we have to be making this bylaw with not just this year in sight, but also the next number of years. And we don't need our snow clearing more hindered. And there are problems with snow clearing in downtown Winnipeg Beach that we need to be addressed. That probably does need its own section. Whether it goes in the traffic bylaw or in a separate area, I'm not sure. I would defer to our CAO in terms of where it's best placed, so that, 5 years from now, someone's looking it up, it makes sense in terms of where it is. You know what I mean?
And I'll highlight that clause because I don't know, like if we're just dealing with traffic, I mean, if snow, it may fit if it's dealing with traffic, having your snow
So we also
There's
want to talk
snow
about not
process.
piling up your snow next to your neighbor's
Right, like
property, like
that,
there's a bunch
just
of other stuff.
piling snow up, people clearing their driveways and dumping the snow onto the street. So our guys go by and clean the street, and then next
Yeah.
thing you know, somebody's clearing their driveway and make a mess.
I think there is a bylaw, yeah, there's a bylaw for that.
I've
You
been,
can't
I
shovel, you can't put your snow, I'm pretty sure I've seen it, you can't put your
Yeah.
snow. I'll find
think
it.
I've seen
I've seen it
a
before.
policy, but we, no enforcement with policy.
It might be a policy, but I've seen
And
it
it
before
talks-
where you can't put your snow onto the street or, I mean,
Yeah,
it's.
so I'm gonna look through
Mhm.
that, like there's nothing clearly that outlines it, and it's not, other than this clause isn't outlined here
Yeah.
either, so.
Yeah,
But I will, that is something that does need to be addressed. Stockpiling of snow, pushing snow
Yeah.
onto the public streets.
yeah,
And parking, I mean, because people are parking, maybe not so much down here, but there are people who are parking on the streets, leaving the vehicle there, and the graders going around, and
Yeah.
I've seen it on my street. And ends up making it more challenging to have good roadways,
yeah,
because now the guys have gone through and they're not making a special trip because now the vehicle's left. So we have been other times there are provisions in there that we took a light stance and just issued a notice on the windshield, and after that they were towed. Because clearing the street, like especially in Winnipeg Beach, the streets are narrow, and if you have a car that's parked and they've gone around it a couple of times, it's
a mess.
problematic.
yeah. It's a mess.
And now you have risk of damage to a vehicle and incident and other things through there. And I think that people need to be cognizant. So I'm trying to understand, and maybe I'll work with PWD, is why is there no, like, I haven't witnessed where someone doesn't have parking. Like, although they choose to park on the street, there is room for parking in either, like, the back. So I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, or is there properties that actually have no parking?
Downtown there's, like, there's always 3 or 4 cars parked on Murray,
Yes, but that doesn't mean they don't
But
have access
why?
to parking.
because they have
do.
more cars than they have space for in the back.
And
And
back.
the same thing with the lodge. The lodge sometimes has 2 and 3 cars. Yeah, like they'll 2 or 3 cars are on center parked, and they used to have a few parked on Stitt in the winter that they can't get in, they didn't have enough. Now, they might have them now, there's a few people left, but in the past, they never had enough space. And then there's a couple other properties too.
Councillor Gendron?
And as I said, somebody not having more
Yeah.
cars and they have space to park their vehicles on their property is not a town problem, and we should not be making bylaws or exceptions because somebody decided they wanted 4 cars in their family and they only have room to park 3.
Yeah, and there are other places in town that they could access parking. They can make arrangements to access parking over the winter. That doesn't include the street.
I mean, it's really all about snow clearing and
Yeah.
being cognizant that you've had a few inches of snow, you know that the plows are going out.
That's
And
right.
it's just having that common courtesy of recognizing there's a job to do.
That's
And
right.
remove the vehicle, find it. It's not saying it's forever, like, and there's no ticket through that, it's just for the snow clearing route when required.
Yeah. Okay, clinging to motor vehicles.
Oh, take us
No,
back,
well,
where are you?
Well, people shouldn't do this. Do we think that this is enough of an issue that we should have that in our traffic bylaw?
If you're not enforcing it, I
If we're not
suppose.
enforcing it, I just had
I
a
don't
picture
think
when I
so,
was
yeah.
looking at this
I
yesterday.
think it's coming.
Watching our bylaw officer chase a car down the street with someone hanging onto the back of it. I'm just not sure that's gonna
I did that in
happen.
grade 6.
Yeah, can't fix stupid.
Right, all on the bus.
I saw you do that last winter.
Can't fix stupid, a bylaw's not.
This
gonna
beats
stop
you,
them.
Larry.
Well, exactly. If someone wants to do that, a bylaw's not gonna stop them. So 13's gone. 14, no person shall turn a vehicle on a street in said municipality in the town so as to proceed in the opposite direction except at the intersection unless such a turn is prohibited at such intersections. Pardon me?
Can't enforce it.
We can't, it's
We
not.
can't
enforced.
enforce,
It's
it's
not-
not enforceable by us, we can't
And
enforce
the
it.
same with 14.2,
Yeah.
you're not gonna
We're
enforce
just
that.
gonna-
If somebody comes there, got it, and
Thank
slide
you.
off.
Or I'd be in big trouble.
I know, I was looking at you.
Oh, you see me. Okay.
Bicycles, now I put a little notation to myself. I want to note that under the definitions 3.5, a bicycle means a device having any number of wheels upon which a person sits astride and which is propelled solely by human muscular power through the use of pedals.
Needs to be.
This has to include e-bikes, being an owner of one.
As I made that note as well.
And they are much more available these days, so we need to change the definition of bicycle to include e-bikes.
So taking, yeah.
I've got a number of circles here just in terms of the highway again.
I would like to address actually number 1, which is the operator should not ride on a sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay,
Parent might not want their small child riding on their bicycle on the road and feel for safety reasons they want their child to ride on the sidewalk.
mhm,
I don't think we should have that in there.
mhm. I actually just saw it tonight when I was coming here. A mom and her 3 little kids was pedaling down the sidewalk with the 3 little kids behind her. They were probably 4, 5, and 6 years of age. It was very cute.
Although I don't know the state of some of our sidewalks, whether the sidewalk is
Doesn't
safer,
matter.
but. So can we take that out? Anyone have, no?
Anybody have any objection to that? Got lots of little kids out here with their parents or grandparents who
Can we
are,
make it like little kids somehow, because there's still plenty of people riding on the sidewalk, and doors open and close on Main Street, and some guys, I almost hit a kid today, and he
okay.
was humming.
Okay, but then we have to look at enforcement, because again, we're not gonna
I know,
have
I know, I
officers
just-
standing on the sidewalk asking for people's birth certificates.
I think if we take it out, you know, if it stays in there and we can't enforce it, then it's in there, but if we take it out. And you know, again, today I almost hit a kid, you know, because he's jerking around, not paying attention.
So is the boardwalk a sidewalk?
No, this wasn't on the boardwalk, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, in fact, my wife saw him coming and she started yelling at him, but he wasn't even paying attention, he just booted
Okay.
along.
Okay, again, we
But
need
do
to, sorry.
But do we make,
All I'm saying is if you take it out, I don't really care one way or the other, you can take it out or leave it in, but there's gotta be something for the sidewalks, when people, you shouldn't ride your bike on the sidewalk. You should be on the
Councillor
street.
Coe, Councillor Kozlowski?
Yeah, I see all kinds of people with the electric bikes on the boardwalk.
No,
Okay.
we're talking sidewalks.
But we're talking about the
Oh, yeah.
sidewalks now.
But you classify that as a sidewalk, or people are walking
And it's the
right
park.
all the time, kids are on there, you know, so 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Okay. Councillor Gendron?
We have no jurisdiction over the boardwalk, so I'm not even sure why we're even discussing the boardwalk at this point. Boardwalk days. Main Street's all full. Somebody's riding a bike downtown, they're on the sidewalk. People are responsible bike riders. I don't think we should be manning a bylaw over the odd person that's an irresponsible bike rider. They're gonna be irresponsible whether they're on the road or the sidewalk,
Whether there's a bylaw or not.
whether there's a bylaw or not.
Councillor Ho, what do you think?
Yep, I agree.
Should we have, did everybody read the whole section 15?
Mhm.
Yeah. 15.2 has to go. The whole thing is actually comical, to be honest with you. One handle, no, one
Oh,
handle.
sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, see you,
So
sure.
the definition under bicycles on sidewalks, so to me, this looks as though this was a snippet from the Highway Traffic Act, which
Mhm.
has been revised. And bicycles on sidewalks on the Highway Traffic Act state subject to subsection 9, which I'd have to go back to. No person shall operate on a sidewalk a bicycle with a rear wheel, the diameter of which exceeds 410 millimeters.
Mine's 700 and it's a 28 inch wheel. So I can't do the math on that, but, so
So,
you're probably talking like about a 24 inch wheel.
So 410, did I say 410?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 410 is 16 inches, just over 16 inches.
Councillor General.
I would just like to suggest that 15.2 be completely removed rather than me going section by section and saying, this should go, this should go, this should go. Nobody's taking my bike from me. Yeah, I would like to suggest that the whole thing be removed.
Councillor Houle.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
Take 15.2 right out?
Yep.
1 through 10? 1 through 10? Councillor Houle?
Yep.
Councillor Kozlowski?
Yeah, I'm just reading the last one here.
Because then they're saying,
Yeah, there are,
keeping one hand on the handlebar.
yeah, there are some things that
And you're
are
right.
ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing is.
And then how you
Yeah,
gotta
I
find
agree, take
it.
it, I don't even care.
And enforcement again.
Oh, yeah.
So take out 15.2 in its entirety.
So does that mean then that 15.1 comes out as well?
Well, bicycles should be subject to the traffic provisions.
Mhm.
No, if a horse is subject to the traffic
Okay, yeah.
provisions.
Okay, I'll put a bag under my bike
Seriously?
seat. Yeah, no,
It's
Yeah,
true.
okay.
It's just funny, sorry.
yeah.
Okay, snowmobiles. Snowmobiles, 16(1)A may be operated along a lane or ditch immediately adjacent to his or her residence or immediately adjacent to the residence of his or her relative to the nearest direct route from point A to point B, which has always been the case. And B is the same thing for licensed motorcycle all-terrain vehicle, again, point A to point B. We still good with those? C, I have some problem with. Any individual operating a motorized mobility aid within the boundaries of the town of Winnipeg Beach shall do so only on sidewalks within the town. The operator shall not ride a motorized mobility aid on a sidewalk in any way that interferes with the unencumbered movement of pedestrian traffic. Seriously?
Apparently it was serious.
And it's also an offense for them to ride their motorized mobility aid on a street. I think that we should, I think we need to take C out, frankly.
Well, we need to keep motorized mobility aid in because it's
But
listed.
they're allowed.
Yeah, they're allowed. I just think the restrictions need to be better. Like it's saying what a snowmobiler can do, what a licensed motorcycle can do. We do need to still indicate what a motorized mobility aid scooter can do.
It's not depend if it has brake lights and. all
Yeah,
that
that's under our
stuff.
definitions. There's things under the definition. So this is referring to what we've identified as one. So all I'm saying is, instead of shall, what if we say, may do so on sidewalks or roadways within the town?
In a safe manner,
Yeah,
following all traffic bylaws.
yeah. Or something to that effect, yeah. Because somebody might not deem a sidewalk, there may be a sidewalk there, but they may not deem it safe. Yes, Madam
Yeah,
CEO?
so I think because when we're dealing with the mobility aid, legislation has been ever changing with that, then I think that prior to us looking at what that definition should or should not be, that I should be in contact with
Good idea.
Manitoba
Yeah.
Disabilities
Association. Yeah.
and find out what the legislation permits and what's preferred language.
Okay. Sounds good, thank you. And then, based on our discussion on golf carts, if we end up allowing golf carts within the town, it would fall under here?
I do have an email off to RCMP just to see if we can permit golf carts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where our ruling
Yeah.
would list. I know even with these snowmobiles and ATVs, there had been, again, change in legislation that, it was my understanding, and I do want to just double check this, I'm a little hazy on the years. Very similar, that if you were permitting ATV use or snowmobile use, and it was a separate bylaw, very much like the speed reduction,
Okay.
because they were never permitted in the past under the Highway Traffic Act, right? Like all-terrain vehicles and that were never permitted,
Right.
right? So if you're permitting them on the roadways, I know that they have allowed for change in legislation where municipalities can allow for that with the lobbying of the snowman and ATV clubs saying, you know, it's tourism, it's this, it's that, but it is problematic, although you have from point A to point B, and we have that in there. I want council to be very aware that enforcement of this is near impossible. So you have someone saying, so normally, like, you would be passing the bylaw that would say these are the designated routes that people can use, and if you allow them on your municipal streets to get to those main routes, enforcing it is near impossible, because they say, well, no, I'm just going there, even though going back and forth. So once you allow ATVs on your roads, I just want council to be very aware that if you're allowing them, it's like bicycles with one hand, trying to enforce it.
The problem is that there's quite a history in this town of young kids, sometimes like 12, 13, 14, in their ATVs, and they use certain streets as racing strips, including Eaton, Hazel, Kernstead, Strollaway. And it's just back and
But
forth.
you need a
all
license
day,
to-
all day.
You need a license to drive a motorized vehicle.
That was
That's-
my point.
That's not us who enforces that.
And
We
MPI.
can't enforce that.
MPI won't insure golf carts, ATVs, and I've seen RCMP hand out 2 tickets on snowmobiles, and I've seen conservation hand out tickets on ATVs. And again, kids weren't licensed, the vehicle itself didn't have a license on it, and so I don't know if MPI is playing it, because I checked on this when this came in the last time, and the biggest problem with the golf cart issue is MPI won't insure them. Ergo, you won't get a license for it. So,
Okay, so,
if you can insure your ATV, if you can insure your snowmobile, and you can put a license on it, and you're old enough and you have a valid driver's license, and you can drive it.
okay, Councillor General.
Yeah, but as the CEO said, she will check on golf carts and see if it's even an option for us to consider.
Yeah.
So until we even know whether we can consider it,
Mhm.
we can probably even just take the golf cart discussion off the table today.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just concerned about the ATVs and the snowmobiles. We used to do from point A to point B. One of the reasons why the park doesn't want to clear the boardwalk is because the snowmobiles are going crazy through town and just, riding circles. If we take this out, it's going to get much worse. And with the ATVs right now, we've got, when I was knocking on doors a couple of summers ago, what I was hearing on the west side, one of the major complaints was the ATVs racing up and down the street, the same people all day, all night, at high gear, revving their engines. And if we take this out from point A to point B, then it's going to get much worse. And I think, yes, it's hard to enforce, but at least if we have it in here, and if we have ways of increasing enforcement over the next number of years, it would be good to have it in here so that we can enforce it more, as opposed to just taking them out.
Can you explain what from point A to point? I never
Point A
understood
to point B means I have a snowmobile and I'm on Kernstead and I am going over
To
to
a
my
small
friends or the store up here. So I take the shortest distance to get from here to my friend, that's it. I'm not coming in here and going up and down all the streets and racing through the park and then going up and down Main Street and then
Okay,
doing that.
so
I'm
point
going
B
from
can be
point A to
wherever.
point B direct.
Okay, okay,
Only on ditches and
Laneways.
laneways. So we can't do it down the middle of the street or anything else, I have to be on the ditch. Snowmobile, I have to be through the ditch or back lane to get the shortest distance to point B.
okay, thank you.
And all-terrain, if I have an all-terrain vehicle in my yard, and a friend of mine's got a big field out there and they're letting me run around them with my all-terrain vehicle, the shortest distance between my place and their place on the ditch only to get there, and then I can go crazy on their property. But I
Okay.
can't do anything in town.
Thank you. And yes, I agree, we should be from point A to point B in there.
Okay. 16.2, I have problem with including motorized ability aids in there.
Yeah,
Except as section 60, off-road vehicles are not permitted to be operated upon a street or any other public property within town. Having motorized
no building over
ability
there.
aids is ridiculous, we take that out.
Yeah,
So 16.3 goes into further detail in terms of getting from point A to point B. So they have to operate on a lane or a ditch, not exceeding 20 miles an hour or kilometers an hour, in accordance with aid restriction, wearing helmet, not operating in a careless way, and not operating without reasonable consideration for the purpose of property, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
Again, I just want to be clear that this
Enforcement.
is not something we can enforce. Just so you know, if we see a child who's driving without a helmet or doing anything, we do not have the authority to do anything about that, even though it's in this bylaw.
That's RCMP enforcement,
That is correct.
even though it's on a town street.
Doesn't matter, it's under the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay,
so then, sorry, just a quick question on that then. If we are getting concerns or complaints, we are not directing them to our bylaw officer, we are directing them to RCMP.
That is correct.
Thank you.
so it does kind of beg the question, doesn't it,
Why is it even in there?
in terms of why we're keeping it in there? It's not our jurisdiction. Is that what
I
you're
mean, you
saying?
can have the point A to point B, but as far as all this other speed limits, operation age restrictions.
We can't
set
do
on the
any of
off-road-
that.
It even makes reference set off in the Off-Road Vehicles Act. Well, it's not, that's not something we can govern unless we have a CSO. Providing those were the authorities that because it's an agreement between the province and the community and what provisions you want. Or they will allow your CSO to enforce on behalf of.
So we take all of 16.3 out?
Well, it's not something we can enforce.
Can we enforce 16.4? On private property without the express interest or consent of the owner? Is that RCMP as well?
I mean, the operate an off-road vehicle, I mean, would be part of that would be like your noise bylaw, right? It would probably be
Okay.
identified, B would be identified in your noise
Mhm.
bylaw.
Okay,
I don't know, without the express implied consent of the owner or lawful occupier of the property,
so if someone,
administratively, I'm not sure.
if someone came out to my land and started doing their all-terrain vehicle in my back area,
They're trespassing.
They're
so
trespassing.
I call the RCMP,
Yeah,
that's
I'm not calling the
correct.
bylaw officer.
That's correct.
Okay,
We don't have the jurisdiction to do anything.
so we're taking 16.4 out.
Yeah.
If it's not our jurisdiction, we can't enforce, there's no point having them in that. Okay,
Yes, it says,
17.0, really?
Noise bylaw.
yes,
That just goes to the noise bylaw.
that's correct.
Here we are in parking finally, 5 o'clock.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. What
Yes,
is the
Councillor
maximum time for a meeting? Is it 3 hours or 4?
4.
Okay.
Are people okay to continue going, or are you wanting to
I'm good.
stop and come back and finish?
Come on. Finish it off.
I will, Madam Mayor, have to leave after 4 hours. I don't have the time to be able to extend the meeting beyond 4 tonight.
Well, I'm hoping that we will be finished shortly.
Okay. Well, no, we have all the other agenda items.
There is no other agenda items.
Well, these were just items that brought forward in reference to the traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
So, people reviewed the parking section, yes? And what were your thoughts, concerns, in terms of what should be included, what should be excluded?
I'm okay with everything
You're okay with everything there?
there.
Councillor Kozlowski?
Yeah, everything was okay. The status quo.
Councillor Gendron?
Okay, I'm a little bit frustrated. We went down this road before and said status quo, and now suddenly we've sat here for 3 hours and we're gonna go status quo again on parking? I'm just gonna ask, has everybody sitting at this table read this portion of the bylaw and seriously has nothing to contribute? Because I just wasted an entire day of my life to go back to status quo.
I said I didn't have a problem with it, because I don't think people should be parking on the sidewalk, I don't think people should be parking in an intersection, I don't think people should be parking on a crosswalk, I don't think people should be parking within 3 meters of a crosswalk. All those things that, I'm okay with all these. You can leave them in, whether or not we can enforce them, and they are in the fees and fines section of our bylaw as well. All the things that we just talked about, most of it is in here, about parking and obstructing laneways. So I disagree with Councillor Gendron. I've been all over this parking problem. This is stuff that I complain about all the time. You can't park there, you park the wrong way, you shouldn't park there, that's a sign, yellow, period. You know, so I like everything that's in here, and I think it should stay there. And that was the question.
Okay.
6 meters.
18.1 says highway, we need to change that to street or road.
Same with 18.5.
Same as with 18.5, as well as 18.2, 18.6. So throughout this, where it says highway, 18.28, 18.210, wherever it says highway needs to say street or road. 18.211. No person shall stop, stand, or park a motor vehicle in a designated parking space or in a manner that makes a designated parking space inaccessible unless the vehicle displays a permit in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act and the regulation under this act. What that tells me is that I can't park a car in a parking space if it makes that parking space inaccessible. Well, me parking there makes it inaccessible. But I'm not sure I understand what this means. No person shall stop, stand, or park a motor vehicle in a designated parking space or in a manner that makes a designated parking space inaccessible unless the vehicle displays a permit in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act.
I believe this refers to, is making reference to accessible parking spaces.
Oh, for God's sakes. So why don't they just say that?
I don't know.
So can we make that a bit more clear then?
But did we not already?
Yes,
reference to that?
that's somewhere else, isn't it?
That's-
Yes.
So do we need that here? That's why I thought it was something different, because that was already covered in 6.5, right? That was covered in 6.5. So 6.5, we can get rid of this, right? It doesn't have to be repeated, is that correct, Sharon?
If that's making reference to accessible parking, then it can be, I don't know.
Is there any other way of reading that besides it being accessible parking?
You don't think it's people that park motorcycles, et cetera, and mobility aids in, because I've seen sometimes, like especially on the crosswalk by Center, where they'll put, sometimes motorcycles will go into the no parking area, and they'll just park there. I don't know what it refers to.
The reason it made me think that it's referring to accessible parking spaces is because it makes reference to unless the vehicle displays a permit in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act and regulations under the, and the permits do fall under the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay, we've already got that covered. in
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying, is that's
Yeah.
why I think.
So unless
that's
there's
what made
another
me
way of
think yeah,
understanding this,
yeah.
this is just
So-
repetition.
And you're suggesting to take it out?
Yeah,
And take it out?
if it's already covered in 6.5.
Yeah, I think, because that's what Councilor Gendron was saying before in the other one, about designated spots.
See, I think there is a lot of regurgitation of just the Highway Traffic Act, just to have a traffic.
Just to have it.
Yes.
So 18.4 then, are you looking at 18.4?
I just have a big old question mark beside that one.
Because it's just saying no overnight parking.
For over 1-ton trucks.
Well, but is there overnight parking for anybody?
No.
Well then,
Yes.
And we have signs on the,
Yes.
that say no parking for.
No, we need to expand our minds beyond downtown. You can park overnight on a side street, I can park overnight in front of my house on Prospect. So, but this is saying you can't, vehicles this size cannot park overnight. So I couldn't have a friend who has a cargo capacity of over 1 ton park their vehicle in front of my house overnight.
And we did use this clause to remove a vehicle that was parked for weeks, months on end, unattended.
Yep,
okay.
So it is-
Should have it removed.
So should we include RVs and motorhomes? Because that's not a truck or a tractor trailer.
the only problem with our limiting RVs and motorhomes is, you know, grandma comes for the weekend and it's too big to sit in my driveway, so she's there for 2 days. Do we want to say no? Grandma can't come visit her grandkids because her sleeping unit is, or her mode of transportation, because for some people, their motorhome is their mode of transportation. Their mode of transportation is too big to park overnight in the street, and it doesn't
Okay.
fit in your driveway.
But we've also got motorhomes and RVs that are very big and very wide. We've got some narrow streets here. So does that mean if I happen to live on one of the narrow streets, First Avenue, I'm not sure if that's a narrow street or not,
Reasonably
and I happen to have a grandma and she parks in the front street, is that gonna make traffic hard?
The CAO has that look on her face like she might want to,
Nope.
or she thinks we're just nitpicking this
She
and we're out to
probably-
lunch. There's something going on.
We're talking about
Yeah.
grandma here.
Oh.
We're talking about grandma overnighting in the vehicle.
No, not overnighting. So, okay,
She's leaving it.
I'm talking about overnight parking, I'm not talking about her
Yeah.
sleeping in it. And so,
On the other hand, if I buy an RV and I live on First Street, is it okay if I park it there for a couple months?
okay, this might be stretching it or pushing it, but do we want to implement some form of a, much like we have dump passes? If you need, Pam, hear me out before I get that look from you. Do we want to implement some form of parking thing to hang for the windshield, and we set a maximum number of days it's allowed for, and they have to come to the town office and and there's a small administration fee, and they have to come to the town office and get it, and it has to be displayed.
The only two things I would say about that is, one, that's something else that our front desk is going to be busy with and keeping track of who and when they were issued and how long they're good for, and then it's also enforcement too, right? I don't know, what do other people think?
I think you should leave RVs alone.
We
Stay
did
with the
have
one-ton
one
truck and
removed.
tractor trailer and
We
school
had one
bus.
removed.
Based on the definition, that was our only recourse. Because this particular bylaw only allows us to enforce section 18.
Was it an
And it
RV?
was an RV, and it was left there for months on end, and winter was coming, and it hadn't moved, and
Then I think we need to
We
fine tune
did.
Councillor Gendron's idea
We
about
did
some sort of
tow
a
it.
pass or a permit. You need to come to the office and.
or any tractor trailer, or any trailer, or any truck, tractor, or, you know, based on what was defined under that with the
Hard to
highway
find,
traffic.
Then fine tune the ability to get a pass or some sort of to make us aware of that. Because there's another vehicle been parked on Prospect for 3 or 4 days now, near First.
Okay, so what are we suggesting?
Get a permit for an RV.
Sharon, what do you think about a permit?
Whatever council chooses.
How do we promote it?
I wouldn't necessarily want to promote it.
No, like how do you make people aware of it? If you're gonna fire, you wait till the end, you say, hey, you need a pass to do that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to let people know for sure.
Sorry, I just want to have an understanding of the one that you had removed. What did it fall under?
It was based on its weight, its cargo capacity.
Okay, so RVs fit under the cargo capacity.
I believe
Large,
so.
large RVs fit under the
Because
cargo
it's over,
capacity.
if it's over
Gross
1
weight.
ton, yeah, it's over
Yeah.
1 ton,
Gross weight.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so you were able to use this before for RVs and motorhomes that were a problem.
Once there was a problem, and winter was approaching, and there was no movement of it whatsoever. We contacted local property owners, and they weren't theirs, that it was parked in front of. So yes, we had it removed.
If we leave this in, or leave it as is, and just say they can't park overnight, we're gonna have ourselves involved in a lot of neighborly disputes.
Mhm.
This
So what's
has
the
been in
enforcement?
the bylaw, this since 17. This clause has been in the bylaw since 17. In my 18 months here, we had 1 instance. So we, again, when we look at our bylaws, I'll be clear out there that we are not taking a proactive stance with bylaw enforcement. Our bylaw enforcement is complaint driven. This was a concern brought forward with our public works for the longevity of this large vehicle. It wasn't as if it was, and it was parked there for months. So we did not act on it in a matter of a day. If someone chooses to complain, we're complaint driven. I am not having a bylaw enforcement officer
That's right.
looking for trouble when there's enough complaints that we get.
Okay.
Yeah,
So there's only so much time he has in his contract.
Yeah.
So his time is used complaint driven aside from patrolling. The extra hours of patrolling for noise and nuisance in the evening.
so we can leave it status quo and that fits the bill for
It
everybody?
has not been, I am aware of once that we've used that, like I said, for a vehicle that was there for months. That we did not get complaints from the neighbors that the vehicle,
Was there any blowback when you got rid of the vehicle?
not that came to me.
And Jean, this would also, or Councillor Gendron, this would also meet your needs that if grandma came to stay for a visit,
Yeah.
and office got a complaint, they're not gonna be sending public works out that day to remove it.
Yeah.
So when we
Right.
look at getting a complaint, again, we have to recognize the hours, that the bylaw enforcement officer is bound by.
Yeah.
And so although people may feel he's not doing anything, if he's met his allotted hours, he does not have the authority to exceed those allotted hours. And any complaint, on average, you're looking at a guaranteed 2 hours. From just the phone call to doing the reporting, all of that is part of his time, like, you know, like keeping track of things, issuing letters, all of that's part of his time to address a complaint. And if he's only allotted X amount of hours in a week, it gets eaten up pretty fast. So unless there is high priority, when we look at somebody, so if grandma's out for the weekend and we get a complaint, there's a good chance grandma's gone before we go to look at it.
Okay, that's fine,
I
thank you.
hope grandma has a good time.
I
That's
just,
all I
I
can
have
say.
concerns with grandma driving an RV, that's.
Oh, that's what your little
all I have
on your face was, yeah, okay. Mom, Grandma forgot it here.
But I mean, again, council, so, you know, when we look at
Yeah.
parking, I think parking, your biggest piece, what you wanna be looking at here is enforcement. If we're not enforcing it,
That's right.
why are we having it in here?
Yep.
And that's the big piece. So that clause was very useful at one
Okay.
point. Because any large truck, there's guys who have big service trucks or tool
Yeah.
trucks that they might park, and especially when we're getting to the point of winter, that's
Yes.
the issue that we have is with the winter.
Good.
Because we had no tow snow route bylaw that I was aware of,
Yep.
so.
18.5, 18.6 keeps referring to highways. We need to say streets or roads. 18.5 is you can't park from 6 in the evening, 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening if there has been some temporary no parking signs. And I guess that's for, you know, parades or marches or any of those kinds of things. 18.6 shall not park or cause to be parked on any street. An advertising sign, a gasoline truck, a vehicle for the prime purpose of washing, greasing, repairing such vehicle except the immediate repairs necessary by emergency. Vehicle display for sale, any vehicle or trailer that is for the purpose of being used as a temporary place of residence, and any unhitched trailer of any type. Yes, Councillor
I
Jandra.
have a question on a couple of them. An advertising vehicle. So you have, not picking on real estate agents, but if you are a real estate agent and you have a magnetic sign on the side of your car advertising your business, it can't be parked on the street? Is basically what this is saying. Or your business, like, or what is an advertising vehicle?
I sort of thought it was, you know, a vehicle with a big billboard on top with flashing lights, but I could be wrong. I was tired when I was reviewing this.
I thought the same thing as you. Not with the
Yeah.
flashing lights, but,
Side panel
Yeah.
advertising.
yeah, Clay's Automotive.
Okay, that's fine then, that's good, I'm okay with that. A vehicle displayed for sale?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We had one on the other day by the highway, truck parked right on the street with for sale sign. And I know where the guy lives and he's nowhere near where he's advertising his truck.
Okay, so then can we, vehicle displayed for sale, like, can it be allowed in front of a person's property?
Yeah, but he
On
had
their
it on his
property.
property.
But not on a street.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
no, I'm talking about, can it be allowed on the street in front of somebody's property? Like, I don't want it back in my driveway, I wouldn't mind parking it on, I live on Second, I wouldn't mind being able to park my vehicle on the street that has a for sale sign on it.
Not according to this.
Well, that's what I'm saying, can we
As
change
long as
that?
it's insured, I'm sure that.
Yeah, like lots of people still use their vehicle that have a for sale sign, little sign in it. I don't wanna be restricting those people from being able to park it in front of their house because they've got a sign in the window.
The problem with registration is MPI has changed that, so when you used to have your yearly stickers, it was easy to identify whether or not a vehicle's
Yeah.
registered. It's no longer easy to identify that now.
The previous bylaw for that we had now, I had phoned and complained, there was a guy who was parking his vehicle on Main Street with his for sale, just abandoning it, it would be there all day long and he'd come and get it at night and every day we'd bring it back to
Right.
it.
But what I'm asking about is having it on the street in front of your premises.
I think you should be able to do that, I don't have a problem with that, but, and the other one I mentioned, that person lived on Grove and he was parking it on
Okay.
somebody else's property.
So what do we want to change it to? Councillor Kozlowski? Councillor?
Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
And do you have a suggestion, Councillor Gendron?
Yeah, it says unless specifically permitted by resolution of council, so perhaps we can just leave that there and have a resolution of council at our next meeting to allow, to address this, just a resolution to say that vehicles can be parked in front of, with a for sale sign in it. No, okay, you want it defined in here, Sharon?
Bylaws supersede resolutions.
Oh, okay.
So if you're trying to
So then we
supersede a
can-
bylaw by resolution, I would say no. No, I won't do that.
So then
either
this, should
you
this
want-
be
If you want
reworded
to
then?
permit it, if you're going to pass a resolution saying that you're going to allow it, remove it from the bylaw.
Yeah.
You don't need double legislation.
Okay, then let's take, can we take it out of the bylaw and pass a resolution for it?
What do you mean?
Or leave it in the
So this is saying unless specifically permitted by resolution of council, so that means people have the ability to request that any
Oh,
one of these
okay.
vehicles.
Okay, got it, sorry, that's what the resolution council means, okay,
Yeah,
not a general blanket.
no, they're saying council, it comes, so if I'm selling my vehicle, I go, council, I'd like you, I know your bylaw says this, and I'd like to
It's like asking
sell
for
it.
a variance.
It would come to council, and council can by resolution at that point
Give permission.
give permission.
With conditions if we want it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then at that point, we could say it must be,
In front of your own
like,
property.
in front of your own property, it must be a registered vehicle, not an unregistered vehicle.
Because right now, it's
Okay.
not permitted.
Okay, let's leave it then, now I get it.
Permitted
Okay.
if, by resolution, so someone has to make the request
Okay,
before it can be permitted.
okay, that's fine, we'll look at it on an individual, grandma
And
what?
I can maybe make that a bit clearer, unless specifically permitted by resolution of council. And I may look at saying, may make application, right?
Yeah, okay,
You know, I'll take a look.
okay, and then we'll look at it on an individual basis. Got it.
Okay, last page here, folks. What are people's thoughts on 19.1?
Good.
Basically what it's saying is the bylaw officer, peace officer, RCMP has reasonable probable cause for believing that a vehicle is in breach of any of the provisions in section 18. Then they can remove the vehicle or cause it to be removed. They're talking about towing it. But this is only section 18. We're not talking about enforcement for all of the other sections. We've talked about enforcement. Councillor, Sharon.
Yeah, so I do have issue that, like when it comes to the RCMP and dealing with parking, although yes, road infractions under their jurisdiction, we know for several years of working with the RCMP that parking infractions are the lowest priority. And I don't believe that we should be indicating in here, like, the RCMP will have their jurisdiction with or without our bylaw.
Yes.
So I'm not comfortable, and this is now about us and our level of enforcement without the RCMP. And so it's preferable that is removed. And it's
That's
only if
scratching it.
we are only if our bylaw officer is removing vehicles, that's what we're discussing here.
Correct.
Yes, Councillor Gendron.
So so right now we have expanded bylaw enforcement for unsightly buildings to commissionaires. So if down the road, at some point, we make a decision to have them enforcing traffic, Should we be including, would they be considered a peace
They
officer?
would be considered by law enforcement officers or designated officers. So we did update the bylaw of who our designated officers are.
Okay,
And
so,
commissioners is listed under there. So they have the power to enforce our bylaws.
sorry, but they're called designated officers?
Correct.
Okay, and this one doesn't specify designated officers, it just says,
But they are bylaw officers.
oh, they're considered bylaw officers.
Yeah.
Okay, designated officers
And they-
considered a bylaw officer.
yeah.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
And the RCMP is taken out of 19.2 as well?
I believe, yes.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing, when we're looking at removing vehicles, I believe there are other acts we have to reference. I don't know if it's still called Garage Keepers Act or,
Right. Yes, Councillor Gendron?
So is this the portion of the bylaw where we will include any decisions made on downtown parking?
Yes, this is about section,
Anything to do with parking?
it's about section 18, and 18 is just parking.
So
It's
we-
not about enforcement of anything
No.
else.
So, any, I mean, the whole purpose of this was, or, not the whole purpose. What drove this was, there was a change in decision and we wanted to address downtown parking. So this is now where we need to have that discussion.
list in your parking section, and then, not just your parking enforcement, but under other clause like 6.5, 9.3, 9.5, 9.6, 7, 8, 9, all of the other pieces that you want to have enforcement. Now we'll need to look at having those discussions of what that enforcement looks like, because right now, only out of this whole bylaw, section 18 is the only enforceable piece.
And section 18 is where we want to put whatever we decide about downtown parking. Which is why I was a little taken aback with the status quo comments. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so. People had a chance to review section 20, specific penalties. What are your thoughts, comments? Anybody?
When you say that, I mean, are you looking to change the infraction?
Well,
Like the penalties, or
we've been-
how do we enforce it, or?
Well, we've been talking about parking for a couple of years now, and through all of the meetings that we had, at some point, folks said, let's look at the bylaw before we finalize what we're gonna do in terms of parking, ticketing, towing, infractions. So we've gone through all of the bylaws around parking. We are now at the point of looking at what the infractions and enforcement is gonna be. Section 19 is saying anybody who's in violation of any of the parking issues can be towed and removed. About the penalties, the costs, ticketing.
Sorry. I'm just a little confused because I thought that was gonna be the final thing. Do we not have to make decisions about what we wanna do about parking restrictions in the downtown area and add them to 18 before we jump to specific penalties?
Absolutely. Like I said, bring your ideas to the table. That's why we're having this discussion.
Correct.
If
So
there's
if you're looking
anything
at
else,
2-hour
bring
parking, we
your
need to
ideas
identify
to
that
the
there's
table.
2-hour parking under this
Under
bylaw.
18.
That's
So
right.
the
And
signage
then,
can
yeah,
reflect-
and then we can go back and
Mhm.
review all the ones that were identified as enforcement,
Mhm.
plus anything new that we add under 18 for parking
Mhm.
downtown.
Mhm. So, council's thoughts about parking downtown. Are we wanting to have more restrictions than what is in this bylaw? Are we wanting to have 2-hour restricted parking and have it enforced? Are we wanting to increase handicap parking? Are we wanting to have residential parking? What are, you know, we've had this conversation for the last couple of years, for the last 18 months anyways. We've had numerous meetings on this. So where are you at on it? House or Jarvis?
Don't our signs already on the east side say 2-hour parking?
Yes.
There's no
There's
legislation
no
to,
legislation.
for you to be able to enforce.
So,
not in-
and one of my biggest
15
arguments is
minutes, so again,
always
15
been is
minute
that
parking.
there are copious violations in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, that's what we've been talking about for the last 18 months. When we started talking about parking, it came down to, we have to look at the parking bylaw. We can have signs on the front street, but nowhere does it say here that you know, it's 2-hour parking and this is the infraction and this is the enforcement. And so during our last parking meeting, I think it was our 7th or 8th parking meeting, people said, well, let's look at the traffic bylaw before we make a final decision. So we've looked at the traffic bylaw. Where does this council want to go from here? Are we looking at restricting parking downtown? If so, we have to put it in the bylaw. And what kind of enforcement do you want attached to that? That's council's decision. Council Jandra.
Okay, I'll throw it out there and then we can talk about it. 2-hour parking on the main street.
Mhm.
Identified in section 18 of this bylaw.
And infractions are,
We'll talk about that when we get to, I think it needs to be enforced.
Mm-hmm.
And we will, when we get to specific penalties, we'll decide at that point. But there's no point in putting it in there if we're not gonna, if we're not in agreement on penalties. So maybe we need to go around the table first and say, are we in agreement with some form of penalty? Because if we're not in, if there's not enough of us wanting a penalty, there is no point in putting it in there. I'm in favor of a penalty for any parking decisions we make regarding the downtown area as we've previously defined earlier.
okay. Councillor Jarvis.
I concur, and I've always been for some sort of penalty for people that they're parked there, overextended, they're in no parking zones. I remember even saying, like, I question people, I say, you can't park there. And they go, well, it's okay.
Okay.
So I'm all about penalties, but our question has always been, we can't enforce. How do we get to enforce it? We know they commit the infraction.
Right.
How do you enforce, or how do you even have 2-hour parking? I mean, it has to be between certain times of the day too, because with bands and everything, you're gonna be there longer than 2 hours.
Well, the last meeting that we had, we talked about 2-hour parking from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening. And we said, I think we said Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays,
And holiday
and
Mondays.
Mondays.
Holiday Mondays.
So I think Tuesdays and Wednesdays were the only days it didn't apply. We hammered all this out last meeting.
Mhm.
And we said 8 until 6 to make room for the bands starting at 7. We said enforcement was ticket in tow. We had the whole discussion about not being able to enforce, and our CAO has talked to us numerous times about the fact that we can issue tickets, but we would need a screening officer and we would need a adjudicator if there was a challenge to it and all of those kinds of things.
We still will need that to
Right.
enforce like these tickets for other pieces you want to enforce.
Mhm.
That process will still be part of that.
And we had talked about we can send tickets out to people, but they don't have to pay them because we have no recourse, because we can't go through MPI. And so this council decided at the end of the last meeting, ticket in tow, paid parking, 2 hour on the main street, increased handicap, or increased accessible parking, drop-off zone for the beach over here. Right,
This discussion of motorcycle parking on Main Street, I don't know if that's something council wants to designate
Right.
as well.
right. And so that was our discussion last meeting. That's the decisions we came to, and then somebody said, but let's go through the traffic bylaw first, hence this meeting. So now we're back to the same question. What do we want to do about enforcement of parking on the main street?
I think we should be at least handing out tickets in some way, shape, or form, even if that's just some sort of a gesture of discouragement. The fact that we have bylaws that we don't enforce, it just seems ridiculous.
Okay, so you're suggesting 2 hour parking on the front street?
No, I'm just suggesting when a guy parks in a no parking zone, or he's in a handicap zone and he doesn't have a permit, put a ticket on the windshield.
Okay,
Sorry, but let's get back to what I had asked, which was I suggested 2 hour parking on the front street, but there's no point in us doing it if we're not in agreement as a council that there's going to be enforcement. So if we could stick to the question, which was, does everyone on council agree to enforcement of any changes we're making or not? And that's a yes or no question.
I agree to enforce it,
Okay.
from the beginning, enforce.
Councillor Houle.
Yep, enforce.
Yes.
Okay.
So downtown streets will be identified as 2 hour parking.
So are we now talking about Main Street? Are we talking about all downtown streets?
Don't you need to put a sign up, though? Like, there are signs on Main
Yes,
Street.
we can do that, but
But
right
until we
now,
have a bylaw, until
Then
we
we
have a
should do all
bylaw-
streets then.
okay, right now we have to stick to what is the bylaw gonna state. How we operationalize it, what we have to do to make that happen, we will get to that. But right now, we have to figure out what the bylaw is gonna state. So are we talking just about Main Street, or are we talking about all of downtown?
I think we should talk all of downtown.
Councillor Houle.
Well, we could talk all about downtown, but what if we have a meeting during the daytime that exceeds 2 hours?
Okay, but we can't make a decision based on what's gonna be convenient for council.
Well, I'm just saying, there's times where we need to park more than 2 hours, or anybody needs to park more than 2 hours. I just think it's.
Isn't that our parking lot?
Okay, this is our parking lot behind the
Yeah.
building. So,
Yeah, just pass me, I'm undecided on this one.
Councillor Gendron.
I agree with Councillor Hole. I don't agree that it needs to be all of downtown.
What are you suggesting it is?
I am suggesting the main street. I am suggesting the side streets be used for additional accessible parking, close to me, like in the first block, not necessary all of them, but accessible parking. And we leave the second block back, status quo. Oh, I can't believe I just used that term.
You did.
That we leave it as
It's okay, Pam used it
as a
too.
regular, so that, based on a few things. Business response. We had a letter from a resident, an email, just kind of saying like, it is a short time. We know there's a problem. I don't know if going all out with all of downtown is necessarily necessary. Yeah,
Councillor Kozlowski?
Main Street for sure. Side streets, I don't know, but I sort of agree with Councillor Jarvis on one hand, that people are gonna come with barbecues and they're taking up all the side streets there. There's gonna be no parking for anybody there. They're gonna leave that car there from 8 in the morning till whatever time,
Yeah.
right? So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Main
which-
Street for sure, like I said.
Okay, so
Because of
Main,
the businesses and, bandstand, of course, like we agreed last time on the hours, the set hours, till 6 o'clock. Let's say 9 till 6 or whatever.
Okay, so
2-hour parking or whatever.
so Main Street for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the side streets? I know you're saying you can go either way,
Side
but you
streets,
have to
yeah,
make a
side
decision.
streets, like I said, people will park there
Okay,
all day long.
so what do you think we should do?
Well,
I mean, that's the hard part.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
a hard decision, that we
It's
have
a
to come
tough
up with a
decision to
decision.
make,
It is a
like-
very tough decision,
You know,
and unfortunately, that's
yeah, I would
what
say,
our job is.
you know, as long as you got the majority of the people on your side, you're okay, right?
Majority of what people?
Of the public here, of the residents.
You know what?
Again,
As I said before, no matter what decision we make
Yeah.
at this table tonight, there are gonna be people
Yeah.
who are gonna disagree with us. And I might add, we haven't made a major decision at this table where people haven't disagreed with us. That's part of being on council, that's part of having a thick skin and knowing that you are making a decision that's in the best interest of the community, regardless of some individual opinions. That being said, there's many, many more people who are agreeing with us, but they are the silent majority. They're not the Facebook warriors. They're not the ones who are
Yeah.
mouthing off on, just this weekend, I received 2 letters from people I've never met in my life saying, I know that leading can be really hard, but I want to say thank you and council for all the hard work you're doing. You guys are making some good decisions in there, and I don't think you get enough support. There's lots of those folks out there. So we can't base our decisions on what you're going to read on Facebook, because I guarantee you right now, Councillor Kozlowski, anything we decide, including deciding to do nothing, we're gonna get smashed on Facebook.
oh, for sure.
So I would
Yeah,
suggest that
okay.
we just don't go on Facebook for a while and make a decision that you think is in the best interest of this community this year and for the next 5 years and the next 10 years, so that the next council that comes in here a year and a half or 2 years from now doesn't have to go through and rewrite this whole traffic bylaw again,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't know what the majority of people are gonna think out there.
So, okay, so I'll
So-
say just 2-hour parking on Main Street,
And
That's it.
what should happen on the side streets?
whatever. Magic.
Whatever?
Well, let them park as long as they want.
Why didn't they put 4-hour parking on the side streets?
Well, we could do that.
Okay,
Yeah, that's an idea, put another sign up.
They
As long
do
as
that
you have
downtown,
signage
don't
there posted.
Yeah, I used to park at
3 or 4 hours.
Centerpoint, and
okay, so you're saying
I'm changing my mind.
just,
I'm sorry, but I
Okay.
listened to other discussion and
yeah.
I've changed my mind.
I want to hear from Councillor Fool before I hear from anybody else, because I've heard from each of you.
I already said in the beginning.
You said you weren't sure.
Yeah, I think the 2-hour parking may work, but I don't think it should be throughout all of downtown.
Okay, so what do you think? So you're thinking Main Street?
Yeah, Main Street for sure. I think
And then what do
that's,
you think should happen on the side streets?
I think I'd just leave them the way they are.
Okay,
Councillor Johnson.
Well,
I was gonna weigh in.
Okay, weigh in.
Just said. I think 2-hour parking down Main Street that's enforced, taken in tow. I think the first block of every street coming off Main Street is handicapped, accessible. And the second block is 4-hour ticket in tow.
When you say first block, what are you referring to here?
I'm making it up. I'm saying,
yeah, that street doesn't run through all the way.
what am I saying? Where's my map?
There are spots where it is only 1 block.
Yeah.
That's one.
So what if we define it by a certain number of spots?
I think there's legislation coming out about that.
Okay, then let's say the first 6 spots.
Both sides.
Yeah, the first 6 spots.
I know at the bandstand now, some of
Mary.
the parking lots, the accessible parking for permits and that aren't being used.
Pardon me?
Like the accessible spots on Main Street, let's say during the bandstand, they're not being used because it is a blue curb there, right? And there aren't people that are parking there because there aren't, I guess they're not coming around or whatever to park there.
There's lots of our seniors who are on walkers and accessibility
Yeah, but
aids
again-
who don't come down because
Yeah.
too many people are parked in the accessibility
Yeah, and there's a lot,
spots and they have
yeah.
no way of coming down.
And I've seen a lot of
Once-
empty spaces also.
Once we enforce this and they know we're enforcing
Yeah.
it, that might bring more of our seniors
Yeah, for
who
sure.
are on
Yeah,
walkers
for sure.
downtown.
Yeah.
Who's
The-
first?
Mine's quick, the time, the 2-hour time has it's a finite period, correct? Like say 8 till
Yeah, 2 hours.
6,
Yeah.
correct?
Oh, yeah.
No, during the hours of
Yeah.
8 AM and 6 PM,
Mhm.
yeah, so.
Councillor Gendron.
Yeah, so on the, well, Murray's only, is there parking on both sides of Murray?
No, only on
No,
one side,
one
Washington are no
side.
parking.
Okay, so, south side of Murray,
Mhm.
east and west side of whatever streets come next
Center,
until you get to Hamilton?
Mhm.
And is there parking on both sides of Hamilton? No, just
No,
one?
just one.
And so the east side of Murray,
South
no,
side.
sorry, south side of Murray, west side of Hamilton,
Mhm.
sorry, north side of Hamilton, and then the north and south side of all other streets in between.
Yeah, the
6
first,
parking spot, the first 6 parking spots back.
well, the first 3, but on both sides.
Oh, first 3 on both sides,
Because
okay.
then, if you're
Yeah.
talking, just wait a minute.
Yeah,
Councillor
it's less distance,
So
okay.
then you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 21 spots for accessibility parking. And I know there's legislation coming up that's gonna tell us how many spots
Oh,
we need. And they're gonna probably say less than 21 spots, that's okay. I think if we have the first 3 spots on each of the side streets, unless I'm counting wrong, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 3 is 21.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
everything said.
remember, this, section 18 says, example being that, 6 meters from a stop sign, 3 meters from a crosswalk, so your numbers might be a little different, because when you get from the center block on, you might only get 1 car between the laneway and actual Main Street, because you can only be within 8, you can't be
Yeah.
within 6 meters of a corner.
no, but that's why we're
Yeah.
going to numbers, not
Right.
distance. The
Yeah.
first 3
So-
parking
Numbers.
spots,
The first 3 parking
yeah,
spots
instead
are
of the
accessibility.
first
Right,
block.
but you might only have 1 parking spot between, say, Main
Yeah.
Street and the laneway.
I get that.
Yeah, and then your other ones will be further on.
Yeah, so the first 3 parking spots
First 3 available
Right.
spots,
on each end of each street.
yeah.
Accessibility, and then from that point down, 4-hour enforced chicken and toe.
Yeah,
And then paid parking back there.
paid parking. I disagree with paid parking. I was gonna
Okay,
say.
then,
There was a good argument on the cost effectiveness and the investment versus the return on turning that into a paid parking lot.
okay. So let's just deal with, so that's my suggestion on the table. So everybody's put their suggestion on the table. Let's go around again in terms of what you can live with.
Coasting. I can live with 2-hour on Main Street, I can live with 4-hour on the side, basically everything that you said is fine. And as long as, like I said with section 18, is that we're going to, the whole map of downtown will be painted and signed accordingly.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's the biggest hurdle that we can ever overcome, is to get that under control.
Okay. Councillor Gold.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Jarvis on that.
So you're in agreement with all of it?
Yep.
Councillor Kozlowski?
Yeah, sounds good. 2-hour parking on Main from 8 till 6. Side streets, either 3 or 4 hours, whatever. 4 hours, I'll go with 4 hours.
And the accessibility parking, the first 3 spots.
Sure.
I'm good with that.
Councillor Gendron?
I do agree with it, I just have one comment, or, just what I would like to add, so that we don't have to revisit this, or maybe
Okay.
it supersedes our parking. If the provincial requirement changes for number of accessible spots, do we have to change our parking bylaw? And if so, could we just indicate that these are the designated spots, or more if required by, and whatever it is that would us require, and then we don't need to revisit it? No?
I'll take a look if I can do that.
Okay.
Because I mean, generally, it's, you want to be clear with the spots.
No, like these are the so we might want to revise the bylaw if that needs, if the
Yeah.
if something comes down, or does legislation override our, we can't have a bylaw that doesn't meet legislation?
Right,
Okay, so then that's fine.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure that the number of spots we'll have will far exceed what legislation
Oh,
is.
for
Oh.
sure, yeah, for sure.
And sorry, but are we including drop-off points at either end of Murray? Beach drop-off points?
Yes, we had talked about that last meeting, had we not?
Yeah.
There is a designated drop-off.
Yeah, so keeping that designated
Murray.
drop-off.
Is there
Yeah.
one on this end?
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Murray and Maine, but are we gonna, is there one on this end?
No,
Do we want to, we can't, that far end is in the park.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think DNR Road is our road anyways, right? Yeah, the old
No, yeah,
DNR
I
Road.
realize that's in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
provincial.
Okay.
Do you
so-
want to designate motorcycle parking on Main Street? That was brought forward
I'm not,
in November? No? Okay.
Didn't, Councillor Hool, didn't you suggest to use, did I just make this up?
no, the one behind.
Suggest to use our, I'm sorry, point, our parking lot that we put snow in? That's behind that building?
Breakwater.
Didn't we talk about that lot there and using that for motorcycle parking only?
That doesn't sound familiar, but it's not a bad idea.
It does,
Yeah, I think you brought that up.
it does sound familiar to me too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you did bring it up, and it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a good idea.
Yeah, you got a good idea.
I highlighted it.
So is that something that we want to continue to look at and use that whole lot for motorcycles? Although what happens, there's no motorcycles here.
Yeah,
What if it's raining?
true.
And, yeah,
Does it matter
I don't think it matters.
if we're doing 2 hour on the front
I don't think
street?
it matters.
Okay. So that's what we've decided. What have we decided in terms of enforcement?
We have-
Well, that's what I'm saying, that's our
Yeah.
next step. So enforcement.
Tickets, once again, I don't like toting. You know, it's hard for them to get, say, from here to Gimli if they got no vehicle. And if they don't know anybody else here, right?
But if we approach Domo, they had the old impound there.
Yeah,
See if he wants to do it.
yeah, we could do
That's
that.
where the impound was.
Yeah. That's right, when
And if it's posted on the sign,
yeah,
I mean, that's,
contact this number if your car is towed. This is the.
that wasn't that long ago either.
No, it was only 5-10 years ago.
that's part of my problem here, you know? If I'm coming into a place, you know, and there's a sign up that says, "We will ticket and tow over the 2 hours." Warning, we will ticket and tow. We've got signs up all along Main Street that says 2 hours max, ticket and tow. We do a public education saying on Main Street of Winnipeg Beach, we're doing ticket and tow. Then some person comes up and parks on Main Street and decides to do it for the day. Is it our problem as council, oh, they might have a hard time finding their car? Or is the responsibility on them if they are gonna break the law after numerous warnings? And I think we had talked about the same meeting that we had talked, Barry, about the motorcycles in the back parking lot there. We had also talked about starting this the beginning of next year, and for the first couple of weekends, just putting warning notices on people's cars saying, we will be ticketing and towing as of July 1st, or as of July 15th, or as of whatever. So we're hitting media, we're hitting Facebook, because, you know, I know people in media can call up media and say, we're gonna be doing ticket and tow, do you wanna cover it on CBC? And they will. We're hitting Facebook, we're giving people warnings on their windshields, we've got signs up saying we're gonna ticket and tow. If some bozo decides to come and park here for all day anyways, it really isn't our problem that he can't find a way to get to Gimli, even if Domo can't do it. At some point, people have to be responsible for their own behavior and their own decisions, and if he's making a decision to break the rules, there you go.
I agree.
Oh,
I changed my mind on that. Initially, I was against tow,
I know you are.
but everything that we've discussed today has made me happy, because
Well, I'm glad we
Wow,
mentioned that.
there we go. All is
If
good in
we're-
the
if
world,
we're gonna
I'm
enforce-
sure Jarvis is happy.
if we're gonna enforce the rules, then enforce the rules.
That's what I'm saying.
So, but I mean, I don't, and we had this discussion before, but, you know, if you're gonna do it, go whole hog, do it in its entirety.
Yes,
So, and that includes, like, we're gonna have to do a lot of painting, a lot of signs, we're gonna have to make public
Absolutely.
awareness,
This is a lot of work.
This is
doing
a
but it's
lot of
gotta
work.
get done. And we, and for anybody that was downtown on Boardwalk days, it was a nightmare. And
okay,
if we had any sort of a serious situation, we were in trouble.
I get that. And this is why we have spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours on this, is that if we're gonna do it, we have to do it right, and we have to do it properly, not just for now, but for the next number of years, because it is a lot of work, and if we decide to go forward with it, it's gonna be a lot of work for the office, right?
So it's gotta get
And
done.
it's gonna be a lot of work for Public Works.
Vancouver just went to their last beach, it's now paid. Vancouver has no free parking anywhere at any of their beaches.
There you go.
That's 1.2 million people.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying ticket and tow? I'm sorry to point, Councillor Jarvis, you're saying ticket and tow?
I'm, yes, and again, proper signage, public awareness.
Absolutely. Councillor Houle?
Yeah, I'm not totally against it. I'd really like us to explore Domo as an option for storing these vehicles, for sure.
Okay, but there's a difference between figuring out our bylaw and then putting things out to tender.
No, I'm just
That's
saying,
right.
I'm not in favor of the idea of the vehicles going all the way to Gimli. That concerns me a little bit too. It really does. I understand the breaking the law and all that stuff, but I'm voicing my concern. That's it.
I understand that. My concern with that is let's say Domo does say they've got room and they'll take out the tender and they win the tender. We pass this bylaw and it's, you know, and 6 months from now Domo changes their mind. Are you then wanting to change the bylaw?
I am gonna vote on this. I'm just sticking with what I'm saying. I'm not against ticket and towing, but I'm concerned for people that have their vehicles shipped all the way to Gimli.
Okay? Councillor Kozlowski?
Yeah, same as Council Rule. I would like, again, I would take the ticket and tow if we had a compound here for the people.
Okay, Councillor Gendron?
My understanding right now is we're looking at the bylaw,
Yes.
and yes, I want to see ticket and tow in the bylaw. I have a concern that some members at this table are confusing the next step with the current step, which is, are we putting ticket and tow in the bylaw? The other issues can be addressed when it comes down to us determining how we're going about the enforcement.
Okay. So, Councillor
No.
Sharon?
Councilor Sharon.
Sharon?
So Schedule C, there was a whole schedule, exceptions to the traffic bylaw. Does council want me just to add this to the upcoming August meeting, or do we want to continue? Because I think even with the enforcement piece, when we look at the other bylaws that will happen as part of it, because this has got to be part of through that MBA process, right? So we're gonna have our fees and like our fines bylaw that will reflect the penalties associated with all of the ones that we
Yeah.
wanted
Yeah,
enforcement to in order for us to issue a ticket,
right.
right? So that's a separate, that's part of the legislation of us being able to do that, is then going through that process, right? So although we've made lots of headway, we're not finished with traffic and parking and enforcement and
Also, we have to make decisions about the other things.
so there still will be other pieces, but we did not talk about Schedule C, but we are running short of time.
Yes, we're already at 6 o'clock.
So is this something that council would like me to add to the next agenda, or do you want to set another separate meeting?
I think we do it next agenda.
I think we could probably do it
Yeah.
next agenda. What is our agenda looking like for next week?
I just got
Commissioner?
back.
That's true.
Couldn't
That's
tell
true.
you.
Okay,
Okay,
let's look at the August 14th agenda then.
So can we have Jody just leave all of this in our folders for next week?
Be it hereby resolved, the special meeting of council held August 6, 2024, be adjourned at 5:55 PM.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Kozlowski is seconding. All in favor? Carried.